Hey guys, Average Scarecrow here with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Thank you so much for dropping by the channel. As always, I really appreciate it. I wanted to say again, I feel like I'm saying this on a lot of my videos lately, but the channel just keeps kind of like growing and growing. Whereas like just a couple weeks ago, I think I was at like almost exactly 100 subscribers, and now we're getting up to that 300 subscriber mark, and we're also approaching like 20,000 total views on my account. That is, for me, that is it's crazy. I never would have imagined that would have happened. I didn't think I would ever have a video over like 1,000 views, let alone a couple of them are approaching 3,000. One of them's over 4,000. So you guys are awesome. I appreciate all of you. It really means a lot. Today, in the spirit of trying to branch out a little bit, as I've been trying to do, I just recently did a how would I fix video. I really enjoyed doing that. So I'm going to continue that series of videos where I talk about power crept champions or just really trash champions. And I talk about how I would fix their kits, basically, if I were like in Polarium's shoes, right? So that was a lot of fun, but today I'm going to branch off a little bit more, and we're going to be doing my first ever ranking video. So I'm going to rank every single legendary champion that I've 6-starred. I'm going to split it up into 4 videos so that these aren't like 6 hours long. And we're going to be starting today with Spirit Affinity legendaries. Now, there are a few things I want to call out just real quick before we jump into it. The first one is, at one point, I had every single legendary on my account 6-starred, ascended, and masteries done. I don't have every single champion fully booked. Not every single champion has awakenings and so on and so forth. But now I have a couple legendaries that I just haven't had a chance to fully max yet. So those ones I might go over their kits real quick and talk about what I think they might be good in, but I might just go ahead and not grade those champions because I haven't had an opportunity to actually play test them, right? So the other thing I wanted to call into mind is the progression of Raid Shadow Legends as a video game. Now, when I first started playing the game, having a fully maxed out champion consisted of Ascension, books, masteries, and then if you want to get like really into it, you could say like Great Hall bonuses, right? So if you had like, for example, the only Great Hall bonus that I have fully 10 out of 10 is Void. Everyone else is at like 5s and 6s, and I think maybe some 7s and 8s and 9s, but it's a lot lower than my Voids, who are now 10 out of 10 across the board, right? I put a lot of focus into that because I've got some really good Void legendaries. But now the game has progressed to a point where you have the Great Hall bonuses, you have the Live Arena bonuses, you have not just Ascension, books, and masteries. You have awakenings, you have empowerment, you have Great Hall, Faction Guardian bonuses, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot more to keep in mind when you're talking about these champions. For example, my Barbarians, I almost have all 10 slots filled with the Barbarians on the Faction Guardians. So I don't have the speed, but I have all of the other stuff. So they're benefiting from a lot of extra stats that might skew, or it might, for some people, skew their grade to a certain way, right? So maybe they were B tier before, but because I have all these bonuses on them, you might think that they're like A tier, right? So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to keep all of that in mind when I'm grading these champions. So I'm going to try to approach this from a if you're just now pulling this champion, let's say you're new to the game and you're pulling a legendary for the first time and you haven't really had an opportunity to start building up those things yet. That's what I'm going to try to grade this as. I might fail, and let me know if I do. I might fail. But that's the approach. I'm going to, like when I grade Ragash, I'm going to try to avoid grading him, keeping in mind that he's 6-star awakened with Crushing Rend, so he's getting built in 35% ignore defense in some areas, right? That's what I'm going to try. So anyway, that's what I'm going to be doing. We're going to be going from F tier to S tier. S tier I'm going to reserve for champions who have propelled my account. So there might be some interesting ones on here for you guys. I'm going to keep it open for like debate. And that's the other thing. Last thing I want to call in mind is that this is purely subjective, right? There is no ultimate objective, 100% accurate rankings tier list. There are some really good ones. Hell Hades has they do theirs out of 5 stars, and I think most people would agree that that is as close to objectively true as you can get, even though there might still be some debate on there. But in my opinion, there's no true objective tier list, because you might pull a champion that I think is trash, and they might actually propel your account through the early mid game and maybe even into the late game. So a good example of that would be, for me, I think it would actually be Foley. Foley's not a trash champion. I'm talking about a Magic Affinity champion here. Foley's not a trash champion, but he's also, I don't see many people talking about him being like a top tier legendary champion. But for my account, when I pulled him, dude, that guy was a monster. I used him in Arena. I used him in Dungeons. I used him in Clan Boss. I used him in Doom Tower. I used him in Tag Team Arena. I used him in campaign locations. I used that guy everywhere. He propelled my account to all the way from the early game into the early late game, you could say, maybe even further than that. So this list, the last thing I want to say, because I've been rambling for about 7 minutes already, this is a subjective list. So if you disagree with a grade I give somebody, I would just ask that you politely disagree with me. Maybe don't come after me. You know what I mean? I'm a little nervous. I don't want to offend anyone. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so let's go and jump into it. So yeah, we're going to be trying to grade this based on the metric of, like, if I just pulled this legendary, how would I grade them, right? So we're going to start here with Ragash. Ragash is the Skinwalker defensive-based champion. I'm going to try to speed through the kits, talk a little bit about where I use them, and then give them a grade, okay? So Ragash is like I said, Spirit Affinity Skinwalker defensive-based champion. He's got a 2-time hitter on the A1 that places increased defense on this champion for 2 turns. That's fantastic. He can buff up his own damage on the A1. On the A2, he's got an AoE, 100% chance when booked. I'm also going to go into this assuming that they're fully booked. Well, should I do that? 75%? Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I think that's fair. Attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of placing drop defense on each enemy for 2 turns, and a 100% chance of placing a stun for 1 turn after attacking, all on a 3-turn cooldown. That's an incredible ability. You're getting drop defense. It can hit hard because he's a defensive-based nuker, and he's placing the drop defense before attacking, which is really key there. And then getting crowd control after that. So even if you don't kill everyone, you're also getting crowd control as well. That's an excellent ability. He's also got strengthen and increased speed on all allies for 2 turns, and perfect fail on himself for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. And then at the start of every turn on his passive, places a perfect veil on the ally with the highest attack, and he inflicts 20% more damage against the targets whose defense is lower than this champion's. He's got defense in all battles by 30%, so he's self-buffing, he offers protection, he offers crowd control, he offers self-damage buffing, and he offers drop defense and crowd control as well. This guy is a monster champion, an absolute beast of a champion. Use him. He's going to make faction wars so easy for you. Any dungeon for wave clearing content, because he's got that drop defense. He's excellent in Arena. He's also very good, again, because he's a drop defense champion. It's going to help your damage a lot. I'm sorry, I already said Faction Wars. Doom Tower, excellent. I'm going to give Ragash an A+. Ragash is a very, very good champion. Moving on from there, we've got Varl the Destroyer. This guy is a Doom Tower hard champion, a very cool looking champion. He's an attack-based orc. He's got on the A1, it's a single target attack that heals the champion by 30% of the damage inflicted. On the A2, he's got a 100% chance of placing a big version of Weaken for 2 turns and decrease attack for 2 turns on those enemies who receive a Weaken. On the A3, he's got on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, he's got a single target attack that ignores 30% defense and destroys their max HP by 50% of the damage inflicted, and places a block damage on this champion for 1 turn if this attack kills an enemy. And then he's got this really cool passive here, increases this champion's attack by 10% each time they use an active skill, up to 100% resets each round. So he's very good against the clan bosses because of the damage scaling. Against clan boss, all 3 of them, he can come out and deal a lot of damage because he's going to be doubling his attack. He also has not super high base attack, but he does have pretty decent base attack. And if you can scale the attack up and then scale it even more, that's even better. Give him an increased attack champion as well, and you've got yourself an absolute monster damage dealer. Outside of that, the weaken and the decreased attack are pretty good. So it does offer a couple different ways you can build him. You can build him all out damage like I do, or you can sacrifice a little bit of damage for some accuracy. And he's giving you a little bit of survivability here with the drop attack, and he's giving you some damage buffing with the weaken as well. He's got a nice heal on the A1, and he's got a absolutely massive damage dealing A3 with 30% built-in ignore defense. If you put him in a merciless set, you're getting a base of 65% ignore defense on this ability. So really, really good. And then the damage scaling as well is excellent. The only thing about Varl the Destroyer is that it takes you a long time to get him. Long time to get him. And I do think that hurts the score a little bit because by the time you get him, you probably already have some pretty good damage dealers on your account. So for that reason, I'm going to give Varl the Destroyer a B-. Very, very good against the clan bosses. Outside of that, he's a good damage dealer, not great, nothing really special. So I think B- is a fair grade. Moving on from there, Ruel the Huntmaster, Dark Elf attack-based champion. This guy is an interesting one. I'm a fan of him, but even though I'm a fan of him, I have to admit that he is missing some things in his kit. He has a lot, but it almost sometimes feels like too much. So on the A1, we have a 65% chance of placing decreased attack on a single target enemy, and then transfers a random debuff from the champion to the target if the target is under Hex. That's a nice A1. On the A2, we've got an AoE on a 3-turn cooldown that places an extra hit on enemies under Hex debuffs, and then ignores 25% of each target's defense if there are 4 or more enemies under Hex. So built-in ignore defense mechanic is really nice on that AoE. On the A3, on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, he's got an increased accuracy on all allies for 2 turns, and then a Hex on all enemies for 2 turns, and then places a perfect veil on this champion for 2 turns and fills his turn meter by 50%. On the passive, he has a decrease the speed of enemies under Hex by 5% and the resistance by 10%, and then increases the damage enemies under Hex debuffs receive by 10% and drops the value of their heals by 30%. Crit rate in all battles by 20%. That's my least favorite aura. I don't like crit rate in all battles, so that already he gets a little bit of a punishment on his grade for that, but he's got a lot. Increased accuracy and Hex is nice because it leads into the hard-hitting A2. The only thing I don't like about this is the last part of the second part. The perfect veil is good on him, but the turn meter fill by 50%, while it's good, I would like to see it maybe buffed a little bit. There are so many champions now with extra turn mechanics in their kit that even if you buff this up to 75%, I don't think it would make him particularly like meta or game breaking. His damage isn't fantastic. Even if you get him all of the setup, his damage isn't anything like, it's not in the upper echelons of like attack-based nukers in the game. So he requires quite a bit of setup to make him a good damage dealer, like maybe even like a really good damage dealer, but the setup required, and then there's always that chance, if you don't bring another Hex champion in, there's always that chance that he won't get back around to the extra turn to get this A2, and they might cleanse the Hexes off. It is a possibility. So that's why I say I've seen that happen quite a lot. And that's why I say I think buffing this to about 75% would be really, really good for his kit. And I actually don't think you need to change really anything else in his kit. If you wanted to push him into like the meta of damage dealers, I think you buff up his this to 75%, and then I think you make this like Thor's A2, not Thor's A2, sorry, Crowhod's A1, where each hit is counted as an individual single target attack rather than an AoE, because it would circumvent the damage mitigation that you get in Hydra for this ability. So having said all of that, I rambled for a little bit. I apologize. I'm going to give Ruel the Huntmaster a C. I'm going to give him a C. I think a few tweaks could push him into the meta, though. Pelops the Victor. This guy is one of the Argonite HP-based champions, one of the new champions of the new faction. I think I'm going to sneeze. Sorry about that. Pelops the Victor, Argonite HP-based champion. I'm a huge, huge fan of this guy. Massive fan of this guy. He's got a drop attack on the A1, 100% chance that can't be resisted or blocked if the target is under HP burn. So if you bring an HP burn champion alongside of him, like a ninja, for example, is a good guy to have alongside of him, you're getting an irresistible drop attack that can't be blocked either. Really, really great. On the A2, on a 3-turn cooldown, he's got a single target attack that ignores half of the target's defense if they're under an HP burn. And then the damage inflicted goes up by 10% for every turn remaining on any debuffs on this champion and the target, up to 200% bonus damage. I got this to hit against the clan boss for the highest I saw it was 1.6 million. So it can deal a lot of damage, a lot of damage. If the damage inflicted by the skill is less than 50% of the target's HP, steals all buffs from the target and places a stun for 2 turns that can't be resisted if the target is under HP burn. So again, I like champions like this that you have the option to build them a couple different ways. You don't have to go all out damage. You can go all out survivability and make him a single target crowd controller as well for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. That's really powerful. On the A3, we've got the on a 3-turn cooldown, it's an increased attack and magma shield based on 30% of the champion's max HP, and he also gets a taunt on himself as well for 2 turns. And then he's got a passive built into the A3, decreases the damage all allies receive by 20% while the champion is not under drop defense. So damage mitigation, a massive shield, increased attack to set up your damage dealers, taunt on himself to absorb more damage from enemies. And then remember that the magma shield is reflecting damage as well. So really good for arena. So he's not only a PvE champion, you can use him as an arena champion as well. He's got a dedicated passive here. He's immune to stun, HP burn, and petrification. And then whenever he's attacked, has a 100% chance of placing an HP burn for 2 turns, and also a 50% chance of placing a petrification for 1 turn. If he's under drop defense, though, the chances are cut in half. So 50% and then 25%. He's got resist in all battles by 60. I'm a huge fan of Pelops the Victor. I use him in a lot of different content in the game. I'm going to give him an A-. I think that he is an excellent champion. I don't think he's in the upper echelons of legendary champions, but he is definitely worthy because of what he's offering your team. He's definitely worthy of an A-. Moving on from there, Ezio Auditore. This guy is the that was my really bad Italian voice. Sorry, Ezio Auditore. He was the free champion. You could get him and a 5-star soul for him from the Assassin's Creed collaboration. I'm a big fan of Ezio. He's got on the A1, he's got a drop defense on a 100% chance on a single target that can't be resisted if he's under Veil or Perfect Veil. On the A2, he's got an AoE on a 3-turn cooldown with a 100% chance of placing 2 poisons and a poison sensitivity that can't be resisted if he's under Veil or Perfect Veil. And if they're under 4 or more debuff, he instantly activates all poisons on the enemies. So you can pair him, I pair him with a Calvalax to clear content really quick, and that'll give him a reset champion like a Lamasu or a Donnie. And you can basically clear out the first 2 waves of each dungeon in about 10 seconds. It's really cool. If any enemies are under Stone Skin, he places 2 bombs instead, and they can't be resisted if he's under Veil or Perfect Veil. And if all enemies are under Stone Skin, it decreases each bomb debuff's detonation countdown by 1 turn. Now, the second part's a little bit iffy. Requiring all of them to be under Stone Skin to get the decreased detonation, I think, is fine because he does it on the same ability, which is really cool. But because you can't really predict what the enemy team is going to be running their teams in, you can't really rely on the Stone Skin. So, and with Mercurial coming into the meta, I hardly ever see Stone Skin anymore. Now it's shifting to 3 or 9 pieces of Mercurial. So that does lose a little bit of value, but for PvE, this ability is incredibly good. On the A3, he's got a single target attack and steals all buffs from the target that can't be resisted if he's under Veil or Perfect Veil. And he's ignoring 35% defense as well as shield and strength and buffs. That's really good. When you think about champions like Marichka, who has a really powerful shield and strength and buff that's protected, being able to ignore both of those is really good for arena. On the first passive, he's got the Assassin's Creed one, where anytime an enemy's HP drops below 25% after receiving damage from an assassin, they receive additional damage in proportion to this champion's attack that is not critical and ignores 100% defense. And then he's got the full synchronization. Places a perfect veil on this champion for 2 turns at the start of each round. Whenever this champion is about to receive damage that would exceed half of their max HP, has a 35% chance of fully decreasing the damage to 0 instead. And then whenever this champion is attacked, has a 35% chance of counterattacking. Okay, so the perfect veil on the passive synergizes really well with all of the rest of his kit because he's getting irresistible debuffs at the start of each round. which is really good. He's got speed in all battles by 19%. Damage mitigation on a 35% chance is really, really good. It's not an evade, right? So the chance is higher, but it's not an evade. So he won't evade debuffs or their effects, but he will evade the damage, which is really good. And then the counter attack leading into more A1 decreased attacks, decreased defenses as well is really good. Ezio Auditore, I think he's a good wave clearer. I think that this A3 is really good in arena. I'm going to give Ezio a B plus. I think he's really good. I guess I should have said I was going to talk about where I use these guys a lot, and then I proceeded to not do that. So let me just recap real quick. Ragash is good everywhere in the game. Varl the Destroyer, very good against what am I thinking here? Clan bosses. Outside of that, not super good. Ruel the Huntmaster is just a good general use damage dealer, but he does require a lot of setup. He's also very good at faction wars. Pelops the Victor, he's going to be S tier in faction wars, but you can also use him against all of the clan bosses. You can use him as a taunt champion. You can use him as a mischief head tank in Hydra, and he's good just everywhere for survivability. Ezio, like I said, very good wave clearer and niche use case in arena. This attack can hit pretty hard, and he can steal buffs as well. So really, really good there. He's also very good for faction wars as well. And yeah, just a really good general use wave clearer. Guys, give me 1 second. I'm going to go, I need to go get something done real quick, and then I'll be right back, and we'll continue on with Granite Doorkeep. I'll be right back. All right, guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. I had to grab a drink and some chapstick. My lips are already getting a little chapped. We're only 5 champions in. So I'm going to try to power through this. This is the first time doing a video that's probably going to end up being extremely long, so just bear with me here. We're going to move on now to Granite Doorkeep, a fusion champion, or was he a fragment? I've already forgotten. He was a fusion or a fragment champion. You guys can remind me in the comments. He's an HP-based champion, a damage dealer, and a debuffer, which is really cool. He's got a 3-time hitter on the A1, with each hit having a 100% chance of removing a random buff from the target, and ignores 20% of the target's defense. He's got an AoE on the A2 on a 3-turn cooldown with increased accuracy on all allies for 2 turns and drop defense and block buffs on all enemies for 2 turns. He's got a single target hitter on the A3 on a 4-turn cooldown. Before attacking, fully cleanses the champion, places a shatter and increased damage on all allies for 2 turns, ignores unkillable, stone skin, block damage, and if they're not under any of those buffs, he deals double damage instead, 100% more damage, and grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy. So Shatter is going to buff up your ignore defense by 15%, sorry, rather. So if you have 50% ignore defense, it's going to, or rather 20% on the A1. So it's going to be 15% times 20% added to the 20%. So it would come out to, I'm just guesstimating here, but it would come out to something like 23.5% ignore defense, right? So a pretty decent buff there that scales really well when you get into like the upper, like if you're ignoring half defense, it's going to scale a lot higher, right? So I really like that buff. Unkillable stone skin and block damage, being able to ignore that on the A3 with a really hard hitting A3 is awesome because of how meta those buffs are in arena. And then a 3-time hitter being able to strip away total guard stacks is really good as well on the A1. He's got a passive at the start of his turn, removes all crowd control debuffs except for sheep at the start of this champion's turn. And if the target of this champion has no buffs, inflicts damage by 20 bonus damage, inflicts an extra 20% damage against those targets. So you've got even more damage scaling, and he's essentially immune to any crowd control debuffs. That is awesome. And it's not on a cooldown either. So he kind of got a little bit of he got the Fabian treatment here, which is really awesome on a damage dealer. Crit rate in all battles by 20. I don't like that. Crit rate in all battles crit rate in general is just my least favorite aura. So that's a shame. But this guy's really good everywhere. Like I said, arena, he's got a 3-time hitter, which is good for total guard that ignores 20% defense and buff strips. So you're just getting a ton of buff strips on this guy on the A1. He's got increased accuracy on all allies, including himself, which is really great because he goes into a drop defense and block buffs, which is good everywhere in the game, but particularly good in Hydra because it's on an AoE. So you're getting 2 essential debuffs there against Hydra. on a pretty decently hard-hitting A2 ability. He is essentially immune to crowd control debuffs, so these things are so prevalent in Arena right now, and you have a chance to just get rid of them, which is really great. But it also makes him a good counter to the Fearhead in Hydra. So Faction Wars, he's excellent. He can deal a ton of damage against the boss on this A3. He'll strip away all of the crowd control buffs that the boss in Faction Wars places on you, and so on and so forth. So Granite Doorkeep, an excellent fusion. He got mixed reviews, I think. His reviews are really good now, but when he was announced, I saw a lot of people making videos about him, like, oh, it's probably okay if you skip this one. And I disagree. I think that I think he's an excellent champion. I'm going to give him an A. Granite Doorkeep, I'm going to give him an A. We've got Michelangelo, my favorite Ninja Turtle when I was a kid. Not my favorite in the game, but Michelangelo was always my favorite Ninja Turtle in the movies and TV shows. He's a Bannerlord attack-based champion. He was the free one out of the Ninja Turtle collab, so you could get him and a 5-star awakening, which is really great. It was accessible to everybody. He's got a very similar A1 to Ragash, so it's a 2-time hitter with each, or if either hit was critical, places an increased attack on this champion for 2 turns, which is great because he's an attack-based champion. On the A2, we've got on a 3-turn cooldown, it's a 100% chance of placing drop defense on a single target enemy, and then also places a stun for 1 turn. And ignores 25% resistance if the attack is critical. That's going to be throughout his kit, so I'm not going to repeat that on the next one. This is included, ignore resistance is included in the A3 as well, but then applies a debuff spread, taking all debuffs from the target and placing them on all enemies, and gets that bonus ignore resistance well. The only thing it won't spread is the stun. So this is not an AoE stun, and I wish it would say that. Because I've tested it and he won't spread the stun. So the stun is by itself, but he spreads the decreased defense and any other debuffs on the enemy onto all enemies. On the A3, on a 4-turn cooldown, he's got an AoE with decreased attack and leech, and places a taunt on this champion for 2 turns. Now, taunt is interesting, but it does lead into the passive here. On the passive effect, a 15% chance to evade, unless he's under taunt, and then the chance goes up to 30%. He's also got the Ninja Turtle passive. Whenever one of his brothers attacks, he will join in the attack. On the active effect, he's got a shield equal to 300% of the champion's attack for 1 turn when they receive a hit on a 1-turn cooldown. So the taunt, it goes into the active effect. The A1 leads into more shield on the active effect. The evade leads into a 30% chance to evade, which is excellent. He's got crowd control. He's got drop defense. He's got debuff spreading. He's got self-buffing damage. He's got decreased attack on all enemies, so that helps for survivability. He's got leech, which is great for healing. This guy's got a little bit of everything, man. Michelangelo is, he is a really good champion, a really good free champion. And I think that he's going to help you in a lot of different areas in the game. He's got accuracy in all battles by 70 as well. That's a powerful aura. If you're struggling to place debuffs, you just slap him in there with an accuracy in all battles and boom, you're pretty much good to go. I've got mine in Brimstone. Since the 5-star awakening is free, I'll talk about the awakening as well. Smite is a really good one for this guy. Really good, because you can get extra damage against bosses as well. Michelangelo, I'm going to give him an A-. I think this guy is extremely good. A bit long on the cooldown on the A3. And then the fact that it doesn't spread the stun, it's not necessarily that it doesn't spread the stun, it's that it doesn't tell you that it doesn't spread the stun. So I think they should add that in there, like right here, will not spread crowd control debuffs. I think it would be fine. But that does, in my opinion, hurt him a little bit. Maybe I'm just being petty, but I think that's a good grade for him. Stock the Broken, legendary support champion out of the Ogren Tribes faction. This guy is like a Theodore the Savant in that he can clear pretty much all of the mid-game content solo for you if you build him right. Build him in Regen Immortal with high resist, and you've got yourself a solo champion that can farm stage 20 to 20, probably stage 20 to 23 dungeons. After that, it might struggle a little bit, but Very, very good. On the A1, we've got a 2-time hitter with each hit having a 50% chance of increasing the duration of poisons and HP burns by 1 turn. On the A2, we've got a 2-time hitter. The first hit instantly activates 1 tick of all poison and HP burns and on all enemies, and 1 tick of all continuous heals on all allies. The second hit has a 100% chance of destroying each target's max HP by 3% for each poison and HP burn activated by the skill, up to 60% destroy HP, and then fills the turn meter of all allies by 20%. So this guy can solo content, but if you want to use him in a team format, he's also giving you turn meter fill on the A2 as well on a 3-turn cooldown. That's really powerful. On the A3, he's got another AoE on a 3-turn cooldown, has a 100% chance of placing 2 poisons on all enemies for 2 turns, and if they're under an HP burn, places 3 instead and places a weaken if they're under an HP burn, places 3 poisons and a weaken for 2 turns instead, and then places 2 continuous heals on all allies for 2 turns. So he's got healing for your allies, he's got turn meter fill for your allies, he's got poisons, he's got potentially weakens and more poisons, he's got instant activation of the poison and HP burns, he's got instant activation of the continuous heals, he's got extended duration of poison and HP burns, and then on the passive here, this makes him really fun in arena as well. The damage inflicted by poison and HP burn debuffs will ignore block damage and unkillable. Whenever an ally attacks enemies with destroy max HP, increases the damage dealt by 10%. So you've now got, and you've got speed in all battles by 20%. So now you've got ignore block damage and unkillable on the poison and HP burns. So think about that for a minute. When you place poison and HP burns on Marichka, she places a block damage on everybody. But now you can get past that by with just the passive. So if you were to do like a Calvalax combo, and you could do Calvalax with Stock the Broken. Now, to be fair, I don't think I've tested this, but the way that it reads, it doesn't say poisons placed by this champion. It says poison and HP burn debuffs will ignore block damage and unkillable. So if you put a Calvalax on your team in arena against like a Marichka, for example, those poisons will go past the block damage, which is really cool. Very cool. And then you compare like a Lydia and deny the revives. So that's really awesome. I'm going to try that out actually now that I've read that. So this guy is really good. Stock the Broken. I think he's an A+ champion. I use him primarily in I didn't talk about God, I keep doing that. I'm sorry. Michelangelo, good everywhere in the game. I think that's fair. He's good everywhere in the game. Stock the Broken, also good in most areas of the game. Probably not so much for clan bosses, but in PvE content, dungeons, faction wars, Doom Tower, all those different areas, he's really good. But the one area where I don't see a lot of people talk about this guy is actually Amius. Amius is a very hard boss who has massive, massive, massive healing. But when you destroy his max HP by 60%, the heals that Amius gets are practically nothing by that point. So I actually pair my Stock the Broken with another destroy max HP champion, and you wind up destroying his max HP very fast, which gets rid of the heals, which means that you can kill him faster. So Stock the Broken is actually very good for Amius as well. Moving on from there, the grades have all been really good. The grades have all been really good up until this point. Skeletor is going to be the first low grade that we get. Spoiler alert, which is a shame because I love He-Man and he looks really cool. This Skeletor looks awesome. So he's a support champion out of the Knights Revenant. On the A1, he's got a 2-time hitter with each hit having a 100% chance of increasing the duration of a random debuff on the target by 1 turn. It's not horrible. It's not great. On the A2, he's got a single target attack, which is on a 3-turn cooldown when booked, but 5 turns when not booked. Has a 100% chance of placing petrification on the target for 1 turn. If it were 2 turns, I would be like, oh, that's pretty good. If the target is a boss, places decreased attack and decreased speed for 2 turns instead. And then whenever a petrification debuff is removed or expired, has a 75% chance to replace it with a decreased speed for 1 turn. So yeah, like it's not a 100% chance. It's a 1-turn effect. Not very good. On the A3, on a 3-turn cooldown when booked, increase accuracy on all allies for 2 turns, and then steals any block debuffs and 1 random buff from each enemy, and then decreases the enemy's turn meter by 15% or 30% if they're in the Tolarian League. On the passive, whenever this champion attempts to place a debuff, steal a buff, decrease an enemy's turn meter, or increase the duration of a debuff on an enemy, increases this champion's accuracy by 20 for each buff on that enemy. Whenever this champion is hit with a hit, has a 40% chance to place a decreased resistance for 1 turn, or 75% chance against champions from the Tolarian League. Accuracy in all battles by 60. He's one of the worst. He was a free champion, by the way. So you got the him and the free 5-star soul. For that reason, I think that for some players who are just starting out, you might be able to get some value out of him. But even for new players, I don't think it's going to be very much value. He's not worth booking. The effects are not good enough to book, in my opinion. The A3 isn't bad, but the A2 is pretty trash, in my opinion. I will say that some people have found a use case for him in Chimera to get some what am I thinking here? Because of the decreased resistance, there are like some challenges that you need where the boss has decreased resistance. So there's some use cases for him. But that's the Chimera is really the only one I can think of where you could get really any value out of him. I'm gonna give Skeletor. I'm gonna give him a. He's just so bad. He really is. Even with the 5-star Awakening and Brimstone, I think he's horrible. I'm going to give him an F. I think he's really bad. I think Skeletor needs a really big buff. Moving on from there, we got Loki the Deceiver. This was another free champion for the Asgard's Divide event. He's a support champion out of the Barbarians faction, and he's a different case from Skeletor. I think he's actually the exact opposite. I'm going to give him a pretty good grade. On the A1, we've got an AoE with a 50% chance of increasing the duration of all enemy debuffs by 1 turn. And if this champion is under Veil of Perfect Veil, it goes up to 70% instead. So a 70% chance to increase all enemy buffs by 1 turn on all enemies compared to a 100% chance of increasing the duration of a random debuff on the target by 1 turn on a single target. I think you can already see why I consider Loki to be better. On the A2, we've got a 3-turn cooldown, selects a target. If the target is an enemy, places a block active skills, block buffs for 2 turns. If he's under Veil or Perfect Veil, applies a debuff spread, taking 2 random debuffs from the target and placing them on all enemies. That means if you lead off with this, you can get an AoE, block active skills, and block buffs at the start of the round, which is really good against mythical champions. Block active skills is actually the best control debuff for mythical champions because you prevent them from switching forms as well. If the target is an ally, heals them by 50% of their max HP and places a Perfect Veil on them for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. And if this champion is under Veil of Perfect Veil, applies a buff spread, taking a random buff from the target and placing it on all allies. That's really, really good. A2. On the A3, on a 4-turn cooldown, has a 100% chance of stealing all buffs from a target and 100% of their turn meter, which can't be resisted if he's under Veil of Perfect Veil. If the target's turn meter was not stolen, fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%. Also, places a 50% increased attack on all allies for 2 turns. So he's a damage-dealing setup champion. He's a buff stealer. He's a turn meter stealer. He's a turn meter filler if the turn meter wasn't stolen. Really, really great. On the passive, we've got a Perfect Veil on this champion for 2 turns at the start of the round, which is great. That means irresistible debuffs. And places a Perfect Veil on him for 1 turn whenever their HP drops below 50%, and then has a 15% chance to evade or 30% chance to evade if he's under Veil of Perfect Veil. On the active effect, this is on a 4-turn cooldown. If the champion's HP is below 50% when targeted, has a 100% chance to evade. So you get a guaranteed evade, and then the evade goes on cooldown, but the evade from the other part of this passive does not go on cooldown. So you still have that 15 or 30% chance to evade even after the guaranteed evade goes away. Accuracy in all battles by 60. This guy's really good. He's actually a really sneaky good healer with that 50% heal. He's good as a damage setup champion. He's good as a debuff extender. This is a really powerful opening move in the arena because it essentially leads into an extra turn or close to an extra turn, which leads into block active skills and block buffs on a target and potentially on an AoE. I really like Loki the Deceiver. However, having said that, the kit is good. You know what? I'm going to be fair here. I think Loki the Deceiver is a very good champion. I'm going to give him a B+. I don't think he's necessarily like A tier. I think there's a few things that might be missing out of his kit, but for what he does, he's very, very good. The debuff spreading is really good. It's not a. I think what would push him into the A tier is if it were all debuffs, right? So it's two random debuffs. So you're not guaranteed to get the block active skills and block buffs if there are already debuffs out. I think that's what prevents him from being like an A tier champion. So I'm going to give him a B plus. I think he's very close to an A tier champion. Moving on from there, we've got Calvalax. I use Loki, I should say here. He's one of my main Faction Wars champions as a healer and turn meter control champion. Dark Fae, he's S tier because of that 100% turn meter steal. Arena, he's very good against mythical champions for control. So yeah, he does have a lot of really good use cases. Calvalax, I only use Calvalax in Arena, and I use him sometimes if I want to switch things up a little bit for wave clearing. I pair him with like an Ezio or a Theodore or a Stock the Broken. So I do like Calvalax, but I don't use him a whole lot. So on the A1, we've got a single target attack that has a 55% chance of increasing the duration of all poisons on the target by 1 turn. And then he gets a heal by 2.5% of the max HP for each poison on the target. So a pretty good heal if you have a lot of poisons, a pretty good heal, and increasing the duration of all poisons is a good solid A1 ability. On the A2, he's got a single target attack that places an extra hit for each poison on the target, up to 3 extra hits. That's probably smart because you can end up placing like 10 poisons on an enemy. So you definitely don't want to do 11 hits on the A2. On a 3-turn cooldown, so you don't actually have to book this guy to get the full value out of this ability, which I really like. On the A3, we've got an AoE, which increases in damage according to the number of poisons on each target, which is based on attack and enemy max HP on a 4-turn cooldown. But again, no cooldown here, so you don't actually have to book Calvalax to get close to the maximum value. You'll get bonus damage, but you don't have to book him to get the cooldowns, which is really cool. On the A3, places 4 poison debuffs on all enemies for 2 turns at the start of each round. Has a 50% chance of placing a poison on all enemies for 1 turn at the start of each turn. Whenever an enemy places a poison on this champion, removes it and replaces it with a continuous heal for 2 turns instead. So he's a poisoner who counters poison. So it's kind of interesting. You can actually use him to counter Calvalax if you see a Calvalax in Arena. The thing about Calvalax is if you put him with an Arachno Elixir, he becomes absolutely broken in Arena. The only things that get around that are Total Guard and Feral. So if you have Total Guard or Feral or Stone Skin, I guess, you can counter this guy. But if you don't have those, you can win the match without even having to take a turn. When Arachno Elixir was put into the game, I had him in Arena as my defensive base on my defensive team. It was Mikage for the accuracy lead, and then 2 Calvalaxes. And when I checked back, I had no defensive battles over 24 hours. Nobody wanted to fight this guy. That's changed. But when Arachno Elixir was first introduced into the game, it was broken. Absolutely broken for Arena defense. So the enemy max HP is really nice as well. In my opinion, it doesn't scale as well as some of the other max HP champions. So you do need a little bit more to be able to get that to get it to cap. So like in Dragonheart 10, for example, he's very good because you can place the poisons and get an enemy max HP on the A3. So he does have some areas where I think he's very good in. Dragon is his best dungeon by far. Faction Wars, he's good to clear out waves with those big poisons. Arena defense, I think he's very good. Having said that, it's hard, man. Like it's hard to explain how he's good in addition to a poison combustion champion. So if you paired him with an Ezio, he becomes like extremely good. If you don't have one of those champions, I do think he loses a lot of value. For that reason, I'm going to give Calvalax a B-. Kraw's Wallbreaker. This guy was again, I am sorry, I can't remember if it was Fusion or Fragment. I think it was Fragment. He's a attack-based champion out of the Ogren Tribes faction. He's got a 3-time hitter on the A1, with each hit having a 50% chance of decreasing the detonation of all bombs on the target by 1 turn, and then has a 50% chance of placing a stun on the target for 1 turn as well. That's a reliable stun on the A1 with decreased detonation of bombs. That's a solid A1. On the A2, he's got a 100% chance of placing 2 bombs on each enemy that detonate after 2 turns, and fills this champion's turn meter by 25% for each enemy with a bomb debuff. So uh, uh, you're essentially getting a 100% turn meter fill, right? So it's not for each bomb placed, it's for each enemy with a bomb debuff. So if you get one on all 4 enemies, it's a 100% turn meter fill. If you only get 2 bombs on 3 enemies, it's a 75% turn meter fill. So that's a little bit weak. It would be better if it were based on each bomb, right? And it's on a 4-turn cooldown as well. Now you get the turn meter fill, but a 4-turn cooldown still feels pretty long. On the A3, on a 3-turn cooldown, he's got another AoE with a 100% chance of decreasing the detonation of all bombs by 1 turn. Also has a 100% chance of placing block active skills for 2 turns. Now, this is an interesting ability because if you can lock out the cleanser, then it's pretty much game over. Now, on the A2, he's placing the bombs. So you don't actually have to worry about affinity. You only have to worry about accuracy. On the A3, however, it's an attack. So you could weak hit on this. So that's a little bit of in my opinion, I get it. You don't want to make him totally unbalanced, but it does hurt his value a little bit. Block active skills, I did talk about that. Against mythical champions, this is very good. Bombs are very good in Arena against Stoneskin. Outside of Arena, bombs aren't very meta. You can use him against Bommel, but he's not as good as Nishak. And then the block active skills outside of Arena is also really good. I actually use him in Faction Wars hard because those fights take longer, which means I can't just nuke through the enemy waves like I normally do. So being able to lock them out is actually very good. On the passive, fills all allies' turn meters by 5% each time a bomb detonates, and then has a 20% chance of activating an instant turn whenever an ally or an enemy is killed by a bomb. I do like that. I'm sorry, excuse me. I know you guys don't like the burping. I apologize. It just popped out. Increases the ally attack in all battles by 30. I like that. I use him in Faction Wars hard. I use him in Tag Team Arena sometimes. I use him in Classic Arena sometimes to switch things up a little bit. And if I didn't have 2 Nishaks, I would use him in Bommel as well. I'm going to give Kraz the Wall Breaker because of some of the weaknesses in his kit. Being able to weak hit on the A3, I think, hurts his value a little bit. The bombs, the turn meter being based on how many enemies receive a bomb and not based on how many bombs he places, I think hurts him a little bit. Because like I said, if you get resisted by 1 champion, you only get a 75% turn meter fill, even if you place 6 bombs on all other enemies. Because of that, I'm going to give Kraz the Kraz Wall Breaker, I'm going to give him a C. I think if you had changed this to maybe just like it's not an attack, I think I would put him in B tier. But because of that, I'm going to give him a C. Iudex Artor. This guy was I think he was a hybrid fragment of, but like you didn't have to, God, what was it? Remind me, guys. I think it was a calendar, right? 30-day calendar. And at the end of the calendar, you got the last fragments for Iudex Artor. This guy's a Sacred Order support champion who I actually really like. I actually booked his A2 and his A3 because I use him quite a bit, actually, believe it or not. On the A1, he's got a AoE that heals all allies by 5% of this champion's max HP. Solid A1. On the A2, he's got increased attack and strength in all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown, and then a 15% turn meter fill. That's solid A2. On the A3, he's got a single target revive with 50% HP and 50% turn meter, and an increased attack on that ally for 1 turn, and then activates the revived ally's default skill, targeting the enemy with the lowest HP. This is really good with to pair it with Phoenix, because Phoenix has a block revive on the A1. So there's some really cool stuff you can do. Like you can put him in total guard, and then let Phoenix die, revive him, and then Phoenix is more than likely going to kill whoever has the lowest max HP with that hard-hitting A1 ability that has block revive. But then he's got another passive as well. This is on a 4-turn. It books to a 3-turn cooldown, though. If an enemy is killed by an ally's default skill after being revived, by the revival mandate skill resets the cooldown of his revive. So you can actually do it twice in a row. You can revive Fenax. Fenax goes in and kills someone. He resets the revive, and then Fenax dies again. You revive him again, and then he goes and kills someone again. So it's really cool. There's some kind of fun stuff you can do in Arena with that. Outside of that, I actually use him, believe it or not, in Amius because he's a tanky champion. I actually build him with Stalwart and Defiant to get a lot of AoE damage mitigation. And he's got speed in arena battles by 25%. So he's good arena lead as well if you're just starting the game or if you're kind of still progressing through arena. 25% in arena battles is really good. Outside of Amius, I don't use him a whole lot. I use him as a reviver. Again, I pair him up with Fenax in Faction Wars Hard so that Fenax can die, get revived, and kill an enemy, die, revive, kill an enemy, which is pretty cool. I'm going to give Iudex Artor I'm going to give him a C+. I think that he's not like a top tier on my account, but he is really solid. Moving on from there, we've got Cheshire Cat. This guy, I love this guy. Really cool champion, demon spawn attack based champion. This guy is he's a beast. He's a beast. On the A1, we've got a single target attack, but if he's under Veil or Perfect Veil, attacks all enemies instead, and then places a Perfect Veil on himself. So you're basically getting unlimited AoE attacks on the A1. On the A2, it's a 3-turn cooldown with a 3-time hitter, with each hit destroying the enemy's max HP, max speed by 1%. So you can destroy their speed by 10%, which does not work against bosses, and then also increases this champion's speed by 1% up to 10%. So you can get 10% bonus speed as well. If this champion kills an enemy, places a perfect veil on himself and the ally with the lowest turn meter by 2 turns. For 2 turns. Sorry, not by 2 turns, for 2 turns. I apologize. On the A3, we've got an AoE. Before attacking, Perfect Veil increases attack on himself and then grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy. On the passive, we've got passive and an active here. If this champion is under a Veil of Perfect Veil, turn meter fill effects are increased by 30%. Also, if this champion is under a Veil of Perfect Veil, this champion's attack will ignore 15% defense and inflict 15% more damage. On the active, this is on a 3-turn cooldown. Whenever this champion is about to receive a hit that would drop their HP below 20%, blocks the incoming damage, places block damage and Perfect Veil for 1 turn on this champion. So that mechanic makes him really good in arena because you can get like a last-ditch effort to go in and kill the opposing team. He's a self-buffing champion. He's got Perfect Veil on every single ability and his passive. So he's going to be getting 15% ignore defense, 15% more damage, an AoE on the A1. He's destroying speed on the A2, increasing his own speed on the A2, Perfect Veil on himself again. Yeah, this guy's a monster, man. And his damage is based on attack and speed. So you can build him fast without sacrificing a lot of damage. And you can get his speed up as well to get more damage. This guy's a monster damage dealer. So he's a perfect candidate for 6-piece Slayer. I build mine in 9-piece Slayer, though, to get bonus damage with that Slayer set. So with Slayer on a 9-piece set, so I've got him in something else right now, but when I use him in Hydra, I get that 30% chance to deal additional AoE damage based on the damage dealt by AoE skills. So it's really powerful in Hydra. This guy is absolutely broken in Hydra. He's got speed in all battles by 19%. I'm going to give Cheshire Cat, not just Hydra, though. He's good in Arena. I use him in Grim Forest. I use him in Centranos. I use him in Faction Wars. I use him in Dungeons. There are some dungeon events and some clan quests where it's like, only use demon spawn champions, and I can solo some content with Cheshire Cat because of how much damage he can put out. So I'm going to give Cheshire Cat an A+. He is an excellent champion. We've got Blizzard the Howler. This guy was the Christmas fusion, I think a couple years ago now. Defensive-based champion out of the Ogren tribes. On the A1, he's got a 3-time hitter with each hit having a 50% chance of placing a freeze. This makes him very, 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 very good against Fire Knight Hard. That's his best area by far because of this A1. On the A2, on a 3-turn cooldown when booked, removes any crowd control debuffs except for sheep from all allies, and places an increased defense on all allies for 2 turns, and then an ally protect on all allies for 2 turns as well. So increased defense and ally protection with crowd control cleansing is actually a really solid ability. On the A3, we've got an AoE with a 100% chance when booked to placing a freeze on a 4-turn cooldown, and then also has a 100% chance of decreasing the turn meter of all enemies by 30%. So freeze and turn meter reduction is really good as well. To be fair, it is really good. And then on the passive, we've got a passive and an active. Whenever an enemy tries to place a freeze on this champion, transfers it from this champion to that champion instead. And then whenever this champion is killed, revives them with 30% HP and 30% turn meter, and places a revive on death on them for 1 turn on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. You can solo some I've seen some people solo Phantom Shogun with champion. I wasn't able to make it work unless I booked him, and I didn't want to. I got very lucky, and I got all 3 books to go to the A1 to get that 50% chance of placing the freeze for Fire Knight. And then I put him in Phantom Touch to get a bonus hit against the Fire Knight shield. Blizzard is a little bit of a hard one to grade because I actually want to give him A+ in Fire Knight, but in every other area of the game, his kit isn't complete enough. Like, it's cool to have the crowd control cleanse, but it would be better if it were a full cleanse. The increased defense and the ally protection are actually really good, to be fair. And then the freeze on a 4-turn cooldown isn't, it's not like, it's good to have a freeze for 1 turn on a 4-turn cooldown is a little bit long, but then when you pair that with the turn meter drop, it does make it a little bit better. It's on a longer cooldown though, so I think Fire Knight, I want to give him an A+, but everywhere else, I think I'll give him a C. I think that's fair. Give me 1 second here, real quick. All right. Whew. All right, you can do this, Caleb. We've got Groucho's Turn Drake here, a Demon Spawn HP-based champion. I got this guy, look at that, 4.5 in Hydra. I got this guy I got him the week he was introduced into the game on the progressive chance. I was really excited. I pulled like 20 shards, ancient shards, not sacred shards. I pulled like 20 ancient shards, and I got him on the second batch of 10. So I was really excited. Very, very lucky in my opinion. However, I think that his kit is it's a little frustrating sometimes. So on the A1, we've got a single target attack that ignores 25% of the target's defense. I do like that. And then heals all allies with 50% HP by 10% of this champion's max HP. He's an HP-based champion, so you can scale that up really well. So a solid A1, to be fair. It's a solid A1. On the A2, on a 3-turn cooldown, we've got a 2-time hitter with each hit ignoring 25% defense against enemies with less than 50% HP. The first hit has a 100% chance of placing decreased defense for 2 turns. The second hit has a 75% chance, 100% chance, sorry, of placing block buffs for 2 turns. And then each hit will ignore 25% resistance with targets that have less than 50% HP. So like it sucks because you're like, oh well, I can't count on the ignore resistance until they're under 50% HP. So until I get that ignore resist, I have to build them with the full amount of accuracy. So like why even include that? So for Hydra, for example, you have to wait until they're less than 50% HP to be able to get that. So you need to build them with enough accuracy anyway. So I don't like that. I think the ignore resistance should just be in his kit. I think that should just be in his kit. He's got increased defense for 2 turns and block damage on all allies on a 1-turn cooldown. For 1 turn on a 3-turn cooldown. Sorry, so 2 turns on the increased defense, 1 turn on the block damage on a 3-turn cooldown. The block damage on 1 turn is so he was kind of introduced into the game power crept because you've got block. I'm sorry, where is it? You've got block damage for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. And whenever the block damage is replaced, I'm skipping ahead here. Whenever the block damage is removed, stolen, or expired, they get increased defense as a replacement. So it's a longer cooldown, but it's for 2 turns on the block damage. So in my opinion, a little bit power crept right out the gates on that A3. It's still good, but it's not as good as like a Helicath, who is a fusion champion. On the passive here, we've got if an ally has 50% HP and is under any buffs placed by this champion, that ally deals 10% more damage. Okay, I like that because he's got the increased defense. If an ally has less than 50% HP and is attacked by an enemy under any debuffs placed by this champion, that ally receives 10% less damage. If there are multiple champions, only one will activate. So it's interesting. This is almost like a conditional fervor buff, right? Fervor is increasing our damage output by 10% and mitigating our damage intake by 10% as well. So it's almost like a conditional fervor, which is pretty cool. The conditionals aren't great, though. And then he's got HP in all battles by 28%. He's an HP-based champion, so his damage isn't incredible, even with that ignore defense. I don't like the conditional on the ignore resistance. So if you just ignore that, you are getting decreased defense and block buffs on a 2-turn duration on a 3-turn cooldown. And then the increased defense and block damage is a nice ability. I'm going to give Groucho's Turn Drake a B-. I think that if they had done increased defense for 2 turns with block damage, or maybe increased defense for 3 turns and block damage for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown, I think that would have been a lot better. The passive is nice, but it's hard to not hard, but you don't realize sometimes that you're not getting the effects. And then the I already talked about that. So yeah, I'm gonna give what did I say, a B, B-, B-, somewhere in that range. So yeah, that's Groucho's Turn Drake. Lord Entertainer Fabian S. He's an S tier champion. I hate this guy. I don't like him. You guys might think I'm crazy for that, but anytime I see Fabian in the arena, I'm like, dude, just like, it's so obnoxious. I hate Fabian. Having said that, he's S tier in arena, and he's really good outside of arena as well. He's got a 2-time hitter on the A1, with each hit stealing 10% of the target's turn meter, and places a true fear for 2 turns if the target's turn meter is fully depleted. So that's crazy. Good against Dark Fae, even though it's a small turn meter drop, it's still good against Dark Fae because it's on the A1. On the A2, attacks one enemy on a 3-turn cooldown, places a petrification for 1 turn, has a 100% chance of placing a true fear for 2 turns on all other enemies who are not under fear or true fear. So petrification and true fear, absolutely disgusting. And then he's got a passive on this. Whenever or activates the skill whenever an enemy under a fear or true fear successfully uses a skill. So you petrify an enemy, place true fear on all other enemies. Even if they manage to get a turn and activate one of their skills, he's going to go straight in and petrify him. There have been times where my entire team has been petrified. It's so obnoxious. I can't stand it. I hate it. And then if that weren't enough, on the A3 on a 4-turn cooldown, he's got an AoE before attacking, has a 100% chance of decreasing the duration of all enemy buffs by 3 turns. So say goodbye to all of your buffs, and then grants an extra turn if there are no buffs on the enemy team before the attack. Also has a 100% chance of increasing the cooldown of all enemy skills by 3 turns. It's a lockout champion, a buff stripping champion, a crowd control champion, a turn meter reduction champion, and then on the passive, whenever an enemy is revived, places a true fear on that enemy for 2 turns. So now he's a counter revive champion as well. And then at the start of this champion, before the start of this champion's turn, removes any crowd control debuffs aside from sheep from this champion. So you can't even crowd control this champion. You can't crowd control him. He's going to lock you out. He's going to get an extra turn more than likely, unless you have protected buffs because you just build him with a ton of accuracy. And then he's going to petrify and crowd control the rest of your team. This guy's disgusting. Speed in all battles by 19%. This guy's S tier in arena. And I do think he's S tier in PvE content as well because of the lockout, because of the buff stripping, because of the crowd control. I hate Lord Entertainer Fabian, but he is S tier for sure. We've got all 10 of the Shell here. All 10 of the Shell. He's a Dark Elf attack-based champion. He's got an A1. He's the companion champion of Oella, but I'm going to grade him with the understanding that you don't have Oella. He's got a 2-time hitter on the A1 with a 70% chance of placing drop defense. Sorry, guys. I know you don't like the burping. I apologize. If Oella is on the same team, ignores 50% resist, and if they're under an increased defense, has a 100% chance of removing it, which can't be resisted. It's not a horrible A1, doesn't hit very hard though. On the A2, it's a full cleanse for this champion and heals them by 20% of their max HP with an additional 20% of their max HP for each debuff removed. Then places a shield on this champion for 2 turns, proportional to this champion's attack, and increases by 5% for each debuff removed. Finally, attacks one enemy, will ignore shield buffs. Damage increases by 20% for each debuff removed by this skill. On the A3, we've got an AoE on a 5-turn, books to a 4-turn cooldown, so long cooldown. Attacks all enemies, 100% chance of placing a sleep for 1 turn, and a decreased speed for 2 turns. If Oella is on the same team, will place stun instead of sleep and ignore 50% resistance, and fills the champion's turn meter by 15% whenever a sleep or stun debuff placed by this skill expires. That's actually pretty good. Doesn't hit very hard though. And if Oella is on the same team, grants this champion an extra turn. So here's what I'm going to do. Let me go with passive actually. Has a 15% chance of decreasing the cooldown of a random of one of this champion skills by 1 turn each time they are healed by a continuous heal, or 30% if Oella is on the same team. Attack at all battles by 30%. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give him a grade without Oella, and then I'm going to give him a grade with Oella. I think that's fair. I do actually have both of them, so I think I can speak to this a little bit. This A3 is with all the conditionals. If you meet all the conditionals, right? If you cleanse off, let's say you cleanse off like in Dragon. Let's say you cleanse off 3 poisons and a weaken. So 4 debuffs, right? So you increase your damage by 80%. Let's even say 100%. This ability with all of that conditionality still doesn't hit that hard. The sleep is probably for PvE, it's probably the worst crowd control debuff. It is the worst crowd control debuff. The decreased speed is nice. The turn meter fill can be nice, or it is nice whenever you get it. The passive, decreasing the cooldown of a skill every time they're healed by continuous heal. Yeah, it's nice as well. His kit reads pretty well. The problem is the damage is extremely lackluster. For that reason, without Oella, I'm going to give him a D+. With Oella, I'm going to give him a C+. It doesn't help the damage at all, but he does get with Oella, he does get the stun instead of the sleep, and he does get the extra turn, and he does get the 30% chance to decrease a random skill's cooldown by 1 turn. So without Oella, D+, with Oella, C+. I think he really only needs a damage buff, and that'll push him into the B category. A damage buff would push him into the B category, okay? All 10 of the shell here. He doesn't have an aura, does he? All 10 of the shell, where do I use him? Nowhere. I don't use him anywhere. Gamaran here. Did I talk about Grachos? He's really good in Hydra. He's really good in Faction Wars. He's good in PvE content. I apologize. This is my first time doing this, so just bear with me. Gamaran here. Shadowkin support legendary champion. He received a buff that made him a lot better. Before his buff, he was F tier. On the A1, we've got a 2-time hitter with each hit having a 50% chance of placing block active skills. This is actually sneaky good in Chimera against the Serpent Head. So you can lock out the Serpent Head with a block active skill on the A1. So I do want to give him credit for that. It's also good in Arena for just locking out a target champion. On the A2, we've got an AoE with a 100% chance of stealing all buffs from each enemy on a 3-turn cooldown, and then applies a buff spread, taking all buffs from this champion and placing them on all allies. So he's now one of the best buff stealers and buff spreaders in the entire game. This is busted in Arena. And again, it's actually kind of sneaky good against the Serpent Head. Like if the Serpent Head comes in and steals all your buffs, you can steal them right back and then reapply it to all of your allies. So to give him credit, he's really good in Arena, but against the Serpent, he's also pretty valuable. On the A3, we have a pretty interesting one here. Can target dead or living enemies. If the target is dead, places a block revive on them. Then attacks all enemies. Each enemy will receive damage equal to 20% of the target enemy's max HP. If the target is a boss's minion, the damage is equal to 20% of this champion's max HP. This attack cannot be critical, ignore shield, and 100% of the target's defense. So pretty interesting. So it's not, if you're attacking a boss's minion, the damage isn't great. But if you're targeting like wave based content, this attack actually can deal a lot of damage. So in Faction Wars Hard, which is where I use them the most, you can block revive on an enemy, and then those enemies have a lot, they have a lot of max HP. So you can deal a pretty significant amount of damage to all other enemies as well. If the target is alive, places a True Fear for 2 turns and heals all allies by 20% of the target enemy's max HP. Same thing here. If it's a boss's minion, it's equal to 20% of this champion's max HP, and the True Fear is actually irresistible. So I really like that as well. An irresistible True Fear. Pretty cool. And then the heal, again, if it's based on the enemy's max HP, it's basically a full heal on everybody. If it's based on his max HP, it's still a pretty sizable heal. On the passive, we've got a 1-turn cooldown here, revives a random ally with 30% HP and 30% turn meter each time an enemy is killed, and then revives a random ally with 30% HP and 30% turn meter each time a block revive is placed on an enemy on a 1-turn cooldown. So it's not a powerful revive, but in the very lackluster Shadowkin faction, for Faction Wars, this is very good. Now, outside of Faction Wars, I don't use this guy a lot. I do use him in Tag Team Arena. I don't really use him in Classic Arena that much, but in Tag Team Arena, he still makes it onto some of my teams, depending on who I'm going up against. For Arena, I'm actually going to give him A tier. For PvE, I'm going to give him a C+. I think he's really good in Faction Wars, but outside of that, the buff steal isn't that great. The block revive is good, but it's not exactly a necessity. And the heal is also good, but not, it's not going to be like, you're going to have better healers, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So Gameran, I'm going to give him what I say C+ in all other areas of the game. Arena, I'm going to give him A tier. I already did Calvalax. This is my Calvalax number 2. So moving on from there, we've got Yannicka. Yannicka is an attack-based high elf champion. You can actually get her for free out of the, she's the clan shop, right? I think it's her and your Carl, the Scourge. So she's a free champion. She got nerfed into the ground after the Wixwell nerf. So people were using her to deal massive amounts of damage in Hydra, and then they nerfed her. So a little bit of a bummer. On the A1, we've got a 2-time hitter with each hit having a 50% chance of placing a leech for 2 turns. And if she's under a veil or perfect veil, I think, attacks all enemies 2 times instead. So a potential 2-time AoE hitter with leech on the A1 is solid. That's a solid A1. On the A2, we've got a single target attack, places a perfect veil on this champion for 3 turns if the attack is critical, and then grants an extra turn. That's a really good ability. It's on a 4-turn cooldown, but it's for 3 turns, so you don't necessarily have to book this ability because of the long effect. You can book it to a 3-turn cooldown, though, to get to basically have it unlimited, right? On the A3, we've got an AoE that ignores shield, removes shield buffs from this target. Removes any shield buffs from the target if the champion is under a veil or perfect veil, and then deals extra damage equal to 15% of the value of the removed shield. So I think you can see why she dealt so much damage in Hydra. You would essentially grow the Wixwell shield to a point where it was like, incredibly, you just scale it up and up and up and up and up, and then you allow the buff to be stolen by the Mischief Head. The Mischief Head spreads the shield onto all of the other Hydra heads, and then you come in and you use this ability where you remove the shield and deal extra damage equal to 15% of the removed shield. So people were dealing millions and millions, like tens and hundreds of millions of damage with this ability. So they did nerf it, though, when they nerfed Wixwell shield growth. She's got attack in all battles by 30. I'm going to give Yannicka a C-. I think she can be a solid damage dealer in Faction Wars, and I think through like the mid-game content, I think she can be a competent damage dealer. I don't think she scales very well into the end game, and she's worthless in Hydra now because of the nerf to this ability. So yeah, I think that's a fair grade for Yannicka. I think we're just about halfway done, guys. Nogdar, the Headhunter, attack-based champion out of the Orcs. He's got a single hitter on the A1 that heals this champion by 10% of their max HP and grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy. On the A2, we've got an AoE on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, 5 turns when unbooked. Attacks all enemies. After attacking, this champion sacrifices HP equal to 50% of their max HP and then places a continuous heal on all allies for 2 turns. And he can kill himself with this ability, so you have to be careful. All of that for 1 continuous heal, not a huge fan. On a 4-turn cooldown, not a fan of that. On the A3, on a 7-turn cooldown, 5 when booked, sacrifices HP equal to 50% of this champion's max HP, and then equalizes the HP levels with a target enemy, and then grants an extra turn. The HP level of this champion and the champion will be brought down to the level of the one with the lowest HP, does not work against bosses, and he cannot be killed by this skill. On the A3, he's got a revive on a 1-turn cooldown. Revives this champion with 50% HP and a full turn meter when dead if all allies are alive. He's got attack on all battles by 33%. Nogdar has received at least 1 buff, but I think he's one of those that got 2 buffs. He's cool looking because he's obviously meant to be one of the berserkers from Lord of the Rings. The helmet is almost identical. He's even got the inverse, right? So it almost looks like it's not a hand, but you can see here, like, I think they were going for the white hand of Saruman on there. And he's got the flames in the back, like the one that blew itself up. It was carrying the torch. So in my opinion, this is meant to be a berserker from Lord of the Rings, which that in and of itself is worthy of S tier. However, this champion is trash. I don't like him. I'm giving him an F. Nogdar the Headhunter, you can have fun with him, but he's a pretty trash champion. Like you can bring down the HP level of a champion all the way down to 1 HP and then go in with the A1 and kill them and then get an extra turn. But it's just not good. I'm giving Nogdar an F. I think he's really bad. Valkyrie, a defensive-based barbarian champion. Looks amazing. The red hair. She really does look like a Valkyrie. I love the shield. I love the sword. She could use a little bit more armor, though. Not really equipped to go into battle. I don't know what she's thinking there. But she's got a 2-time hitter on the A1 that decreases the target's turn meter by 10% if the target has any buffs. Damage is based on attack and defense. Don't like that. It should just be defense. That's a nerf, in my opinion. It doesn't deal a lot of damage anyway, but I still don't like that. Good against Dark Fae. Good in arena, good, anywhere in the game where the target has buffs. On the A2, this is her best ability. It's still, in my opinion, a top tier ability in the entire game. It's on a 3-turn cooldown here. We've got an AoE with a shield on all allies for 3 turns and counterattack on all allies for 2 turns. The value of the shield and the damage are proportional to the champion's defense. This shield is massive. You can scale this up super well with the counterattack as well. On an AoE, there still aren't that many champions that have that. It's an incredible ability. She's got this passive as well. This champion's turn meter will be increased by 10% for each time an enemy receives a buff, or each time an enemy champion places a buff. Enemy champions will have their turn meters decreased by 10% each time they receive a buff. So she's getting turn meter fill each time an enemy places a buff, and each enemy is getting a turn meter reduction by 10% every time they receive a buff. She's got defense and faction crypts by 33%. Not a great aura, but it's good for faction crypts. Valkyrie, I'm giving an S tier, and the reason why I'm giving her an S tier is a little bit for nostalgia. So I'm just going to admit to that. I got Valkyrie still pretty early on in my account, and she took me from dealing she took me from getting like the final rewards in the early clan bosses to I was getting the top rewards in the final clan boss. That's how good she is. That's how much she can help your account progress through the game. So Valkyrie, I'm giving an S tier. Massive shield, counterattack on an AoE, turn meter reduction on the A1 and the passive, and turn meter fill on the passive as well. Makes her an S tier champion, in my opinion. Kyoku, Shadowkin, defensive-based champion. Really cool-looking champion. I did a video on her. I like her a lot. She's got a single target attack that places 3 hits instead if they're under 3 or more debuffs, and has a 50% chance of placing a weaken for 2 turns. Really good. On the A2, we've got a 4-turn cooldown, has a 100% chance of placing a drop attack for 2 turns. After attacking, has a 100% chance of placing an HP burn on all enemies that the skill did not place a decrease attack on. So a little bit interesting. I don't know if the HP burn is irresistible. I'm going to be totally honest with you. If the HP burn is irresistible, it's interesting because you could build her with no accuracy and build her as an HP burn champion, or you can build her with some accuracy. And if you get resisted, it's fine because you get the HP burn. But if you don't get resisted, then you get the decreased attack instead. So a long cooldown, though, at 4 turns, that does hurt her value a little bit. On the A3, we've got on a 4-turn cooldown, 5 when not booked, places an ally protect on all allies except this champion for 2 turns, and places a block damage on this champion for 3 turns, and then grants an extra turn. That's a really, really, really good ability. On the passive here, we've got a 6-turn books to a 4-turn cooldown. Every time this champion is hit with a critical hit, heals all allies by 15% of their max HP, and then places an increased defense on all allies for 2 turns. It's not a great passive. It's on a long cooldown. In PvE content, you don't get hit with critical hits that much, and in PvP, if you get hit with a critical hit, you're more than likely dying. So the passive is good, not great. I like the A2. It's on a longer cooldown. I do like the extra turn mechanic on the ally protection with the block damage, so you can absorb a ton of damage without dying. As a support champion, she's the defensive-based champion, but she brings a lot of support. I'm going to give her a B. I think she's really good. B-, I think. I'll give her a B- because of the long cooldown on the A2. We've got Cupidus here. Cupidus is another one of those companion champions he's the companion champion to Venus. I don't have Venus, so I'm only going to grade him based on the fact that I don't have Venus. On the A1, we've got an AoE, which increases by 15% if the target has any debuffs. It's a solid A1. On the A2, on a 4-turn cooldown, we've got an AoE with a 100% chance of placing an HP burn for 2 turns. It's a long cooldown. I'm not a fan of that. On the A3, on a 3-turn cooldown, we've got an increased attack on himself for 2 turns and attacks 1 enemy. Has a 50% chance of placing an HP burn on all enemies for 2 turns if this attack kills an enemy which cannot be resisted. And then on the passive, this is only available when Venus is on the same team. He just inflicts 25% more damage, which is awesome. And then he always counterattacks when attacked. So really solid passive when Venus is on the same team, but we're not taking that into account here. He's got attack in all battles by 33%. The A3 can hit pretty hard. The HP burn, which is irresistible, is pretty nice. It gives him some value against, well, it wouldn't give him a ton of value against the Frost Spider in Doom Tower because you would have to kill a minion with it. But the A2 does give him a little bit of value against Frost Spider because you're getting an HP burn, although you do have to build him with accuracy for this one, so you sacrifice some HP or attack for that, some damage. The A1 and the A2 and the A3 can all hit pretty decently hard, and he's got attack in all battles by 33%, which scales the attack even more. Having said that, the kit itself nowadays, and maybe I'm crazy here, but the kit itself screams to me a little more epic-y. Am I crazy for saying that? I mean, you can get epic champions that have an HP burn on a 3-turn cooldown on an AoE that are bringing more value. So, for example, let me just look up Skrank here. Skrank's a good one for this. Attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of placing HP burns for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown, and fills this champion's turn meter by 15% if at least 1 enemy is hit with a critical hit. So he may not deal as much damage as Cupidus, but he's an epic champion that's giving you an HP burn and turn meter fill. So I'm a little conflicted because that has not scaled very well in today's day and age. So for Cupidus, I'm going to give him a C+. I'm giving him a C+. I think that I think with Venus, he's really good. But without Venus, I think he screams more of like an epic-based champion. I'm not going to lie. So let me know if I'm wrong about that. We've got Richtof the Bold here. Richtof the Bold, Bannerlord attack-based champion. Looks really cool. He's got the massive crossbow. He's got an AoE on the A1, which destroys each target's max HP by 30% of damage inflicted. It's not great. Doesn't hit very hard. But the AoE on the A1 does make him a candidate for like a destroy set, or I'm sorry, a stun set, or maybe even a poison set as well. On the A2, we've got a 3-time hitter on a 3-turn cooldown, with each hit placing a 5% poison on all enemies for 2 turns. So again, you have a champion that pairs really well with combustion champions. Doesn't hit very hard, but he's placing 3 poisons. That's really good on a 3-turn cooldown. On the A3, he's got a single target attack. Critical damage increases by 20% for each poison on the target, up to 100%. Now, this is interesting because it's not increasing the damage inflicted, it's increasing his critical damage by 100% if you have 5 poisons on the enemy. So if you were to build him with 300% crit damage, this would scale it up to 400% crit damage. The problem is, well, he's got faction crips attack by 27%, which isn't great. The problem is that when I tested this guy, the damage was really lackluster, really lackluster. So he really is reserved to a combustion setup champion. So for that reason, I'm going to give Richthof the bold. I think I'm going to give him a D. I think I'm going to give him a D. If this scaled a little bit better, I would say that it's a lot. It would make him a lot better. But this ability does not scale very well. And the poisons, it doesn't hit very hard. The poisons are nice. If they also gave like a combustion ability, I think he would be a lot better. But he doesn't hit very hard, and he's reserved really for, like, if you don't have a Theodore or a Stock or a Zavanna or something like that, he's basically worthless. So I think a D. I'm going to say D. Yeah, D. I'm giving him a D. Kaja the Rye, Bannerlord support champion. She is also a companion champion to, what's his name? Timid the Fool. So we're going to do, again, I do have both of them. So we're going to do with and without, right? So with Timid, what is he? What is she? Without Timid, what is she? So on the A1, we've got attacks one enemy, heals the champion by 10% of the max HP, and if any Timids are on the same team, heals all of them by the same amount. So companion healing going on. On the A2, on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, we got an AoE revive with 50% HP, 50% turn meter, increased crit rate, and increased crit damage for 2 turns. If Timid the Fool is on the same team and dead, revives them with full HP and a full turn meter. And if Timid the Fool is on the same team and alive, resets the cooldown and instantly activates their Kegs of Dread skill. So that's their A2 ability, I think. On the A3, we've got a turn meter fill on all allies by 20% on a 3-turn cooldown, and then also removes 2 random debuffs from each team. If Timid is on the same team, it's a full cleanse instead, and then block debuffs for 1 turn on a 3-turn cooldown. Ooh, don't like that. On the passive, we've got all turn meter reduction effects from this champion, or from enemies, are decreased when 50% when used against this champion, so she's cutting them in half. If Timid the Fool is on the same team, she's immune to turn meter reduction effects. That's really good. If any enemy tries to decrease the this champion's turn meter when Timid the Fool is on the same team, fills this champion's turn meter by the same percentage instead. So you can get turn meter fill instead. So think like an Armand's, right? So if you have her going up against Armand's when Timid is on the same team, you're essentially getting a 100% turn meter fill instead. She's immune and getting a 100% turn meter fill. She's got a speed in all battles by 19%. So let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses of her kit without Timid. So one of the weaknesses is going to be the 2 random debuffs. So it's conditional to get the full cleanse if Timid is on the same team. I don't like that. 2 random debuffs is fine, but that screams more epic-y champion to me, and I don't like that. Then the block debuffs. Even with Timid on the same team, it's a 1-turn duration. I don't like that. She's a legendary. It's got to be 2 turns. It's got to be 2 turns. The A2 is fine. I wish you could place the increased crit rate and increased crit damage, even if there were no dead allies, though. I do think that would help her kit a little bit. Sorry, my ear is itchy. Some champions, you can place the buffs even if no allies are dead, so I don't like that. The heal is fine on the A1. So without Timid, man, it's a shame. I think without Timid, I have to give her, because of the 1-turn cooldown, I'm gonna give her a B-. With Timid on the same team, though, being able to heal the Timid, being able to get the full cleanse, being able to get the instant activation of the Kegs of Dread, or just reviving Timid with full HP and full turn meter. I don't think it helps her a ton. I think it helps her a little bit. So I think with Timid on the same team, I think it takes her from a B- to a B. I don't think it's much of an increase, but it is better. Moving on from there, we've got Walking Tomb Dreng. This guy's an HP-based champion out of the Knights Revenant. We've got a 2-time hitter on the A1, which instantly activates any HP burns on the target after attacking. Now, the instant activation is irresistible, so that's good to know. You don't need accuracy to activate the instant activation. On the A2, we've got an AoE, which has a 100% chance of placing an HP burn on all enemies for 2 turns that cannot be resisted. Irresistible HP burn is really powerful. On the A3, we've got an equalizer of all allies' HP, then attacks one enemy. It will be brought up to the level of the ally with the highest HP. The attack will ignore 30% of the target's defense if the target's HP is equal to or lower than this champion's current HP, and will also decrease the cooldown of the Exalted Pyre skill by 1 turn if the target's HP is higher than this champion's current max HP. On the passive, we've got to reflect by 30% of the damage this champion receives back to the attacker if this champion has 50% HP or more. Not bad. And then deals 30% more damage instead if this champion has 50% HP or less. Now, I don't actually recommend building Walking Tomb Dreng as a damage dealer. I recommend building him as a solo champion or a just reviver healer champion. So, not reviver, sorry, a healer champion. So what I would do is regen Immortal. That way he has 100% HP pretty much all the time. And then you can essentially get a full heal off of the equalized HP because it's going to go based on his max HP because he has the most. And then you're getting the HP burn from a 3-turn to a 2-turn cooldown. And then you're instantly activating the HP burn. This guy is very, very good against the Frostbiter and Doom Tower because you don't need any accuracy. That's a huge barrier for a lot of people. Not having I think it's like 500 accuracy required, maybe even a little bit more against the Frostbiter, and then instantly activating it as well, and then getting this to a 2-turn cooldown instead is very, very good. But you can also use him as a solo champion, the same way you would use like Stock the Broken or Theodore the Savant. Put him in regen Immortal with super high resistance and HP, and you don't need accuracy to place the HP burn, and then you're activating the HP burn on the A1. It's not going to be fast if you build him as a solo champion, but he can get it done. He's got HP in all battles by 30% instead, which is really great. And then I never realized this until a little bit ago, but I'm pretty sure that this is a robot, and this is actually the champion. I'm pretty sure that this guy controls this guy. I thought that was pretty cool. Walking Tomb Dreng, I'm gonna give him a B- because if you build him as a solo champion, he's not very fast, but he can get it done. He brings some value against Frostbiter, like I said, and then he can be a really, really good healer as well. So the thing that holds him back, I think, not a lot of damage coming out of this guy. He's bringing an HP burn, but nothing else. And then the instant activation is on single target enemies. It's not on an AoE. So now HP burn, to be fair, it does trigger on all enemies. So you're still dealing AoE damage, but to be fair, maybe I can talk myself into this a little bit. HP burn isn't like poison. So you activate it on a single target enemy, but it deals damage to everyone. So what did I say? Did I say B-? Let's give him a B+. I'll give him a B+. All right, guys, I'm going to take one more break before we wrap this up because my throat's getting a little sore. So let me just get a quick water break, and then I will be right back. Alrighty, guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. Had to take another break, but I'm ready to finish this thing out. So let's do this. We're going to start off. I got 12 more. And then I've got 2 that I have not finished building yet. So I'm just going to go over their kits, and then I'll give a rough estimate of what I think their grade is. But let's go ahead and kick it off with Helicath. This guy's a Demon Spawn defensive-based champion. This guy's really, really good. I still think he's really good, even after a couple of years of being in the game. He's got a 2-time hitter on the A1, with each hit having a 50% chance of placing a weaken for 2 turns and ignore shield and block damage buffs. So you can build this guy as a damage dealer to ignore shield and block damage, which is really good in arena. Block damage is very, very prevalent right now in arena, so that's really good. He's got an AoE on the A2 on a 3-turn cooldown, which places shield on all allies for 2 turns, which is proportional to this champion's defense. In my opinion, it's not as good as Valkyrie shield. Obviously, he doesn't have the counterattack, but the shield itself, I don't think it's as good as Valkyrie shield, but it is a very sizable shield. So good for survivability there on the A2. And then on the A3 on a 4-turn cooldown, he's got an active and a passive effect. He places a block damage on all allies for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. That's really good. And then he has passive. Whenever a block damage buff placed on an ally is removed, stolen, or expired, places a 60% increased defense on that ally for 2 turns. Really, really good. So you're getting basically 4 turns of buffs on a 4-turn cooldown. It's really cool. So block damage for 2 turns, followed by increased defense for 2 turns, and then you go right back around and you place the block damage on for 2 turns instead. On the passive, he's got increases the champion's defense by 5% for each ally under block damage. So in arena, that's going to be a 20% buff. In PvE, it's going to be a 25% buff. Counterattacks with this default skill. Whenever an ally is hit while under a block damage buff, occurs once per enemy turn. So leading into more 2-time hitters, which ignore shield and block damage, but also total guard. Being able to chip away at that total guard in arena is really, really good. He's got defense in all battles by 30%. Helicath is an A tier champion. I'm not going to give him A plus or S tier because I think that he generally has been power crept a little bit, but not much. He's still a great champion for survivability. He's still on my Ice Golem hard team because of the block damage. The weaken on the A1 is really good. So he's still really good for like traditional clan boss, but also for like Chimera. He still has some utility there. So Helicath, I'm going to give him an A. I think he's still a really good legendary champion. Nekmothar, Lizard Man support champion. I actually really, really, really wanted Nekmothar for a long time. I finally got him. And I'm happy that I did, but I just don't use him as much as I probably would have when he was first introduced into the game. This guy is a turn meter manipulation beast. On the A1, he's got an AoE, which is already great, with a 40% chance of placing a 50% drop attack for 2 turns, or increases to 75% chance against targets under debuff. So a 75% drop attack on the A1 is really good. 75% chance of placing drop attack on the A1 is good. On the A2, on a 3-turn cooldown, he's got another AoE with a 100% chance of placing drop speed and leech for 2 turns. And then on the A3, he's got an increased speed on all allies for 2 turns, turn meter fill by 30%, and then grants an extra turn to this champion, all on a 4-turn cooldown. So you go A3 into A2, and then you've got your 75% chance of placing drop attack on the A1. On the passive here, fills this champion's turn meter by 5% each time a debuff on an enemy is removed, transferred, or expired. So on top of everything else, you're getting more turn meter fill on this champion, which leads into more A3s, which leads into more A2s. He's got speed in all battles by 19%. This guy is a beast of a turn meter manipulator. Faction Wars, S tier. Hydra, I actually think he's A tier still. Dungeons, just for control and turn meter manipulation, I think he's also A tier. Drop attack makes him useful against bosses for damage mitigation. This guy is, I think overall, I think he's an A- champion. I think he's incredibly good. Doesn't deal a lot of damage, but you don't need him to because of everything else that he's bringing to your team. The only reason I don't have him higher is because I do think that he has very little value in arena nowadays. I tried making him work in arena. The AoE against total guard can be good to chip away at the total guard, but if you have Feral out there, if you have what am I thinking? Total guard, if you have Stone Skin, he's not really able to get through any he's not able to get through block debuffs. So if block debuffs goes out, you can't place any of the debuffs. So I don't recommend him for arena, but for PvE, he's exceptional. So that's the only reason I'm not giving him like an A plus, is because he doesn't have a whole lot of value in PvP. We've got Tatora Rhyme Hide next, high elf defensive base champion. Look at those horns. This guy is really cool looking. Another Christmas champion. On the A1, we've got a 100% chance of placing decreased accuracy on a single target enemy. On the A2, on a 3-turn cooldown, we've got block debuffs and increased defense on all allies for 2 turns. A solid support. A2. On the A3, we've got an AoE with perfect veil on all allies except this champion for 2 turns, and then places a shield on this champion for 2 turns, equal to 20% of the damage inflicted. So he's giving everyone else perfect veil, and he's giving shield on himself because he's going to absorb a little bit more damage. The perfect veil on almost all allies on a 4-turn cooldown is solid against the Fearhead in Hydra, so I do like that. And then he's also got the block debuffs and the increased defense as well. The A2 has been power crept a little bit, like it just has. You've got champions like Elva that have a full cleanse with block debuffs, increased speed, stuff like that. So if they added in a cleanse as well, I think that would make him a lot better. On the passive, he has a reflection of 30% of the damage this champion received back onto the attacker, and then also has a 30% chance of placing a freeze on the attacker for 1 turn. So a passive control ability is actually kind of nice. I used Tatora mainly in Faction Wars. I used to use him a lot as a fear counter, so that I wouldn't get controlled by the Fearhead. He's got defense and Doom Towers by 35%. The drop accuracy, I do want to say it can be nice if you're struggling with, like, let's say the Mischief Head is stealing a lot of your buffs. You can pair him with a Hex Champion and place decreased accuracy against the Mischief Head as well. So he can kind of help you to solve 2 Hydra heads, which is nice. So Tatora Rhymehide, kind of an interesting one. I do think he's been power crept a little bit on that A2. The 4-turn cooldown on the Perfect Veil has also been power crept a little bit. There still aren't many Perfect Veil AoE champions in the game, but there are some better ones out there right now. So even though it's still really good, it has been power crept a little bit. I'm going to give Tatora Rhymehide a B-. I'm going to give him a B-. Okay. We've got Cleopteryx. I don't know how you pronounce the name, but this is one of the permanent daily login reward champions. I think you get her. I'm not going to say, actually, because I don't remember. I think it's close to 200 days, maybe. I don't know. Maybe is it 270 or is Vizix 270? Maybe she's 190. Anyway, on the A1, we've got a single target attack that has a 50% chance of placing a weaken for 2 turns, which increases to 70% if they're under a hex, and then places a perfect veil on this champion for 1 turn if this attack kills an enemy under hex. I actually don't like the hex, even though she has hex in her kit. She doesn't deal a whole lot of damage, so killing an enemy is a little bit harder. To be fair, she does deal a pretty good amount of damage, but just comparatively to other champions, it doesn't seem like that much. So it would be, in my opinion, it would be better if it was just a perfect veil. If she attacks an enemy under hex, I think it would be better. But anyway, on the A2, we've got increased crit rate, increased crit damage on this champion for 2 turns, then an AoE attack that has a 100% chance of placing block active skills for 2 turns on targets under hex. So you need the hex to get the conditional block active skills. Again, I don't really like that, even though, again, she does have hex on the A3. So increased accuracy on this champion for 2 turns, and then hex on all allies for 3 turns on a 4-turn cooldown when fully booked, 100% chance, and then also has a 100% chance of placing a fear for 1 turn instead on enemies who are already under hex. And then she's got counterattacks with the default skill every time this champion loses 30% or more of their 30% of their HP or more in a single turn, and then always counterattacks when attacked if 2 or more allies are dead. So some conditional counterattacking here. Her base stats are the base HP and defense aren't super great, so she's a little bit squishier. So it's harder to keep her alive. The increased accuracy and then hex for 3 turns on a 4-turn cooldown is fine. I think it's fine. And then the conditional fear, if you already have hex, I think is also pretty good. The block active skills. So I think the best way to build Cleopteryx is to bring another hex champion in so that you can get the fears and the block active skills instead of her placing the hex herself. So you can actually have someone go in with the hex first and then get a block active skills. Now, the problem is that in Arena, needing to bring another champion in to place Hex so you can get block active skills just isn't great. So she does lose value there in arena. She also doesn't deal a ton of damage. You can have her hit pretty hard. But there are other spirit affinity nukers that I think are just kind of better overall, and nukers in general, right? So increased crit damage is a nice buff to have. Increased crit rate in the early game is a nice buff to have, but by the time you get her, I don't think you need increased crit rate anymore. So all in all, I'm going to give Cleoteryx a C minus. I think that I would love to see a buff to this champion. I'd love to see a buff to this champion. All right, now we've got Theodore the Savant, A+, not quite S tier, but an A+ champion. I love Theodore the Savant. He's my go-to solo champion. He's got an AoE on the A1 with a 50% chance of placing a drop speed for 2 turns. He's got an AoE, places 2 poisons and a poison sensitivity on all enemies for 2 turns, and an increased speed on all allies for 2 turns. So he's got drop speed on the A1, increased speed on the A2 with poison and poison sensitivity. He's placing them so you don't have to worry about affinity on a 3-turn cooldown is really, really good. He's got a increased duration of all poison and HP burns on all enemies by 1 turn, and then instantly activates 1 tick of all poison and HP burns on all enemies, and then places a weaken for 2 turns instead if they are not under poison. So he's got the poisons, the poison activations, increase speed on himself, decrease speed on all enemies on a 50% land rate. What more do you want in a solo champion? He's got a passive. This champion's resistance is increased by 5% for each poison debuff on the enemy team. So if you're in a dungeon, you place 10 poisons, you're getting an extra 50 resistance. So you can build him. He's also got increased accuracy in all battles by 50. This guy's like the quintessential solo champion. You can build him with high resist, high accuracy. You can build him with high HP and high speed. If you want to go more in on resistance, you can sacrifice a little bit of resistance and have him be the accuracy aura in all battles, which is really great. This guy, I think, is A+. The only reason he's not S tier is because you can't really use him in arena that much. So he does suffer a little bit there, but he's so good at soloing content that he is worthy of an A+ in my opinion. We've got Shamrock here. This guy, I literally use him everywhere, by the way. So I've been really bad about like telling you where I use these champions. For the most part, it's going to be Faction Wars. A lot of my champions are reserved now to being Faction Wars champions and then Curse City champions, because I have like a core team that I run in most content, and then they come in niche content. So I apologize. I'll try to be better about that in the next one. Don't hate me too much. Don't be too mean to me. Please don't be mean to me. He's got we've got Shamrock here, Ogren, support champion on the A1. We've got a 2-time hitter with each hit having a 75% chance of removing a random buff from the target. If a buff is removed, has a 50% chance of stealing that buff. They have this tendency with the St. Patrick's Day champions to add in a lot of like RNG stuff. And I don't know if I like that or not. Like, I understand to a certain extent, like Luck of the Irish or something like that, but it does hurt their utility. I mean, it would be better if this were just a buff steal ability. It's not that it's a horrible ability, but it's a chance inside of a chance. So you have a 75% chance of removing the buff. And then if you remove the buff, you have a 50% chance of stealing the buff. So it hurts the value. It does. On the A2, we've got increased defense on all allies for 2 turns. And if they have more than 50% HP, places an increased speed for 2 turns as well. I hate the conditionality here. Also has a 70% chance when booked of placing an increased crit rate on those allies for 2 turns. I hate that. I hate that. Places a revive on death on all allies with less than 50% HP for 2 turns, and has a 70% chance of placing a continuous heal on those allies for 2 turns. I hate that it's not. Why is it not 100%? Like, if you want to book it up to 100% chance, okay, maybe. But a 70% chance of increased speed or continuous heal, and it's only 1 continuous heal. Crit rate is not a good buff in my opinion. Most people don't ever use it. Increased defense is fine, but then a conditional increased speed, I don't know, 3-turn cooldown. I think it's a pretty trash ability. I didn't book him, so it was even worse. But even if you booked this champion, I don't think it would be very good. And then we have on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, places a decreased speed on all enemies for 2 turns and drops their turn meter by 15%. Fills the turn meter of all allies by 15% if any enemy's turn meter is below 50%. He's got accuracy in all battles by 70. There's too much conditionality in this kit. This should just be turn meter reduction and turn meter fill. That's it. He's a legendary champion, so it should just be that. It's on a 4-turn cooldown as well when booked. So the conditional on that, in my opinion, hurts it even more. Too much conditionality. I'm going to give Shamrock a D. I think he needs a buff. Tomb Lord. I like this guy. I don't use him as much anymore, but I think he's a solid champion. On the A1, we've got a 3-time hitter, which places decreased speed on the target for 2 turns if the attack is critical. So you've got a really solid A1 for Iron Twins. There you go. Iron Twins. This is one of the best Iron Twin abilities in the game, in my opinion, aside from Lord Chamfort, who has it on passive. Oella has it on a irresistible A1, I believe, at 100% chance, but it's up there with the top decreased speed abilities for Iron Twins. On the A2, we have a single target attack that has a 100% chance of placing 2 poisons on all enemies for 2 turns, or 3 or 4 on all enemies for 2 turns if the attack is critical. So you build them with a 100% crit rate, and you're getting a decreased speed on the A1, and you're getting 4 poisons on the A2. Again, excellent as a poison combustion setup champion on a 3-turn cooldown. On the A3, we've got a turn meter reduction on all enemies with less than 50% HP by 100%, and has a 100% chance of placing a drop attack on all enemies for 2 turns. Also has a 100% chance of placing drop defense on all enemies for 2 turns, and then grants an extra turn if an enemy's turn meter is decreased by this skill. So the conditionality, again, you're getting so much out of this ability. Like when I go back to Shamrock, you're just not getting that much, it feels like. Even with all the conditionality, it just doesn't feel like you're getting that much. And it's conditionals inside of conditionals with only 80% chances of getting the actual effects. So it doesn't hurt as much as Shamrock's. And because you're getting a 100% turn meter reduction, I actually think that the conditional is fine, because when the conditional lands, you're getting a lot of value out of it. The drop attack and the drop defense are really good. And those aren't based on the turn meter drop, I don't believe. The turn meter, the only thing conditional on the turn meter drop is the extra turn mechanic, and you only need it to land on one enemy. So that's really good. And it's on a 4-turn cooldown, drop defense, drop attack, extra turn mechanics, turn meter reduction mechanics are really, really good. He's got accuracy in Doom Tower by 70. I actually think that that's an okay aura. Doom Tower does require a lot of accuracy when you go into Doom Tower hard. I'm not like, some people like the conditional auras. I don't. I just think I think there should be one type of aura, and it should be all battles aura. Like, maybe you can make an argument for, I guess, let me clarify here. I think there should be 2 types of auras. There should be PvE auras and PvP auras, and that's it. So, and then you can have some that go in between, right? Like an all battles aura. Maybe you have an all battles aura, a PvE aura, and a PvP aura. So that's what I think. Maybe I'm crazy. Again, I don't know, but you know, here it is. So I've got Lysanthier Beastbane up next. I actually haven't built out his masteries yet. I tested him out without the masteries because I was curious. But Lysanthier was a fusion champion, I believe, and he is meant to be a Hydra specialist. So we've got a 2-time hitter on the A1, with the first hit having a 100% chance of placing a hex on the target for 2 turns, and then places an increased crit damage on this champion for 2 turns. So I actually like that. Hex is good for Hydra for spreading out damage. Increased crit damage as a permanent buff, essentially a permanent buff, on the A1 is really nice. On the A2, on a 3-turn cooldown when booked, we have a 2-time hitter, single target 2-time hitter that has a 20% chance of repeating the attack. When this champion counterattacks or teams up with allies to join an attack, will use this skill instead of their default skill. That's really good if you pair him with an ally attack champion. The damage inflicted by the skill increases by 10% each time an ally is devoured, up to 50%. So, like I said, meant to be a Hydra specialist. So you're getting a permanent 50%, 50% damage increase on this ability each time. I'm sorry, 10% up to 50%, and that's permanent across the battle. So, um, the fact that you can use this with counterattacks for me is really cool, because if you have a Valkyrie like I do, when he gets hit, he's going to counterattack every time using this ability. So I really like that. On the A2 here, or A3 here, I'm sorry, we've got a 2-time hitter, with each hit having a 100% chance when booked of placing decreased speed and weaken. If the target is under a hex debuff, places these debuffs before attacking. He's got hex on the A1, so that's kind of nice. So he's got damage dealing buffs, or damage increasing debuff, sorry. And then he's got drop speed, which is, in my opinion, an essential debuff for Hydra. He's got a passive here, ignores life barrier and ally protection, and increases this champion's defense by 5% for each active buff on this champion, stacks up to 50%. So if you have 10 buffs on this champion, he's getting even more damage. So there's a lot of damage scaling on this champion. He's got damage scaling on the passive, he's got damage scaling on the A2, and he's got a damage increasing buff on the A1. So I really like that, and weaken on the A3. So lots of damage potential with this guy, and the extra the chance of repeating the attack on the A2 is really nice. He's got defense in all battles by 28%. He's a defense-based champion. I think this guy is he's not really a one-dimensional champion, but he's really got one area where he's supposed to shine. And to be fair, in that one area, he does do really well. Now, because I don't have his masteries done, and because I don't have his skills booked, I tested him in the early stages of Hydra, and he did really well. He dealt a lot of damage. He had a lot of debuffs. I paired him with a Mikage, so whenever he ally attacked with Mikage, he used this ability instead. So yeah, I do think Lysanthier, I'm going to give him an interesting grade. I think I'm going to give him a B+ in Hydra, because he's not like a top tier damage dealer, but he's bringing enough to the table that I think he's really good in Hydra. In all other areas of the game, however, I think I'm going to give him a C. I do think because he loses so much in PvE content, and because he's not really useful in PvP, I do think a C is fair. But against Hydra, I think he's a B+ champion for sure. All right, moving on from there, we've got Uger, the Worm Eater. This guy is, again, I think he's good in just a couple different use cases. And the primary use case for him is as a bomb setup champion. So I think he's really good against Bommel, and I think he's really good in Arena. He also has some use cases in PvE as well, so that's good. But in my opinion, he's really meant to be played as a bomb setup champion. So on the A1 here, we've got a single target attack that has a 100% chance of stealing a random buff from the enemy. Also has a 100% chance of placing block buffs on the enemy for 2 turns. I like that. Solid A1. On the A2, on a 3-turn cooldown when booked, it's an AoE that has a 100% chance of removing all buffs from all enemies, and then has a 75% chance of placing a weaken for 2 turns. That's a solid ability. A full buff strip with weaken is really good for bomb champions. On the A3, we've got increased accuracy on all allies for 2 turns, and then it depends on what buff they get. If they're defensive champions, they get increased defense, and if they're attack-based champions, they get increased attack instead. So I say he's good as a bomb setup champion, but he's also good as just a damage dealer setup champion, right? But the increased accuracy with the increased attack makes him a very good bomb setup champion, because those are the 2 buffs that you really need for your bomb champions. On the passive, we've got whenever an enemy is revived, instantly activates the A2 ability, Earth Puncture. If an enemy is revived by a champion from the Lizardmen faction, the effects of Earth Puncture cannot be resisted. Instantly activating the Earth Puncture skill will not place it on cooldown. Only one skill will activate. There are multiple, yada, yada, yada. He's got accuracy in all battles by 70. So having a potential for an irresistible is actually kind of nice, because there are some pretty powerful lizard revivers in the game now. You've got mythicals like Lazarius. You've got what's his name? The Void Legendary. I don't have Sulfurion. You've got Sulfurion. In some PvE content, you might run across some Lizardmen revivers. So I do think it's solid passive. I think he's a solid bomb damage dealing champion. He's got some buff removal. So I'm gonna do another conditional one here. In Arena, I'm actually gonna give him a B plus because I think that he brings a lot to the table for Arena. Um, for for PvE content, I'm gonna give him a B minus. I think setting up your damage dealers, he's not losing a ton of value. I do think he loses a little bit of value in PvE content. Um, no, you know what? I'm being unfair. I'm going to give him a B plus across the board. I'm being unfair. I was trying to be crafty with that one, but I don't think I need to be. I think he's a B plus champion across the board. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Let me know if you guys don't like him. But a full buff strip with weaken is really good on a 3-turn cooldown. Increased accuracy with increased defense and increased attack. So giving your defensive damage dealers an increased defense, giving your attack-based damage dealers an increased attack, I think is really good. Being a counter to some revive champions on a 1-turn cooldown, I should have said that it's on a 1-turn cooldown when booked, I think is really good. And then buff stealing with block buffs, yeah, B plus. I'm giving him a B plus. Bivald of the Thorn, HP based champion out of the Sacred Order. I like this guy. I do like him. Attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a provoke for 1 turn, and then heals the ally with the lowest HP by 15% of the damage inflicted. But the really cool thing about Bivald of the Thorn, or Bivald of the Thorn, however you pronounce it, is that his abilities can be placed on enemies even if it lands as a weak hit. So you can use this guy as a pretty reliable A1 provoker for Hydra. But not just for Hydra, for any kind of area in the game, even for Doom Tower with the Magma Dragon. So he'll be positive affinity against the Force affinity head, Magma Dragon. But I believe that sometimes the affinities change, so he can still place it even on a weak hit. I really like that. On the A2, it's a 2-time AOE. First hit having a 100% chance of placing provoke, and the second hit having a 100% chance of placing a leech, and then places a strengthen on this champion for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. The leech and provoke can be placed even if it attacks lands as a weak hit. So you can guaranteed provoke the provoke head in Hydra on the A2, and then have a secondary provoke on the A1. That makes him a strong counter to that Hydra head. It also makes him just a really good control champion in all areas of the game with Leech. So now he's also helping your champion stay alive by just dealing damage. On the A3, he's got another AoE with the damage inflicting 5% more damage for each debuff on each enemy, and then heals all allies by 20% of the damage inflicted, and places a shield on them by 20% equal to by 20% of the damage inflicted. He's got a passive, decreases the damage taken by all allies from enemies under provoke by 15% and 28% HP in all battles. Is his aura. So this guy is a really good support champion. He's got a couple low marks here, but I think those are unfair. I think defense fine, but Chimera, I think he adds some support. Demon Lord, I think to be fair, you can't provoke the Demon Lord or the Chimera, so maybe that's fair. But yeah, the A1, so maybe they're kind of fair. The Fire Knight, Iron Twins, yeah, Magic Keep. Yeah, okay, those are actually fair. Those are actually fair grades because those have more to do with affinity and not having multi-hitters and not having decreased speed. Yeah, so okay, so to be fair, those are, I think, fair grades on him. I'm going to give Bivald of the Thorn a B. I think he's a solid support champion. Or I'm sorry, a solid provoke champion that also has support in his kit as well. I really like that. A 4-turn cooldown on the shield and heal does hurt his value a little bit, but not enough, I think, to drop his score by that much. So I like Bivald of the Thorn. All right, last two here. Drockle the Gaunt, support champion of the Ogren Tribes faction. We've got on the A1, it's a single target with a 40% chance of placing stun. It's not bad. On the A2, we've got increased attack and increased defense on all allies for 2 turns, and places a block damage for 1 turn on allies with less than 30% HP on a 3-turn cooldown. Conditional block damage, like, look, less than 30% HP, you're probably already dead at that point, so I don't think it's that good. That was my experience, which is by the time you get to that low of HP, you're already pretty much dead, so it doesn't help that much. He's got an active and a passive effect on the A3. This is on a 4-turn cooldown when booked. On the active effect, places a shield buff equal to 15% of this champion's max HP for 3 turns. Yeah, I mean, if 15% just doesn't scale that well, on a 4-turn cooldown for 3 turns, it's not horrible, the cooldown, but I think it should be 30%. I think it should be 30% shield. Yeah, I do. He's a legendary champion. I think it should be 30%. On the passive effect, heals each ally by 15% of this champion's max HP whenever a shield is broken, removed, or expired. Allies whose shield buffs are broken will also counterattack the enemy that breaks the shield. Whenever a shield is broken, the heal occurs instantly before any remaining damage from the shield breaking attack is taken. He's got HP in all battles by 25%. I mean, excuse me, sorry. I apologize. I don't like Draco the Gaunt. I think he's a trash champion. The increased attack and increased defense, you get this on epic champions. So you have, what's his name? Giscard the Sigiled has increased attack, increased defense on a 3-turn cooldown. He doesn't have the conditional block damage, but the conditional block damage, in my opinion, is practically worthless. The stun isn't horrible, but it's not great. You're not getting anything else out of it. And then the shield is weak in comparison to other legendary champions, albeit the 3-turn duration is kind of nice. The passive effect is kind of nice as well, but not enough to make up how bad the rest of the kit is and how weak the shield is. So I guess you could argue, like, well, don't you want the shield to get broken? I guess that's fair, but like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, I've tried using this. I tried using it in Ice Golem. I tried using it in Hydra. I tried using it in Faction Wars, and it just didn't work. It just didn't work. I don't know what to say. So I'm actually going to give Draco the Gaunt our second F of the video. I think he's really bad. Suzerain Catan. This guy's an Undead Horde attack-based champion. He's got an AoE on the A1 with a 50% chance of placing decreased speed for 2 turns, a solid A1 ability. On the A2, he's got a 100% chance of placing Weaken for 2 turns and also has a 75% chance of placing Drop Defense for 2 turns. So a weaker version of like a Lydia, right? So it's on a 4-turn cooldown, which kind of sucks, but it's Drop Defense and Weaken, which is a really good ability. I actually like this. I build mine in a 4-piece reflex set to get this back off the cooldown even faster. And what I do is I actually shut off the A3 for Hydra, but I don't shut it off for other areas of the game. So we've got a removes shield, block damage, and unkillable from all enemies and then attacks them. Places a heal reduction on all enemies for 2 turns. The buff removal cannot be resisted. So think of your Sir Nyx, think of your Marichkas, think of your Helicaths and Valkyrie type champions that have big shields. Unless you're getting protected buffs, which to be fair is really kind of prevalent in the arena, this is still a solid ability to have inside of the arena. Block damage and unkillable are strong buffs that are in the meta in arena right now. So I really like this. Attack in all battles by 33%. He doesn't deal a lot of damage, but I think I have mine built. I do. I have mine built in Sniper because we get another 5% chance to place the drop defense as well. So mine is 100% chance of Weaken and 80% chance of drop defense on the A2 on a 4-turn cooldown. I put him in reflex, and then I shut off the A3. And now you have a pretty reliable drop defense and weaken on a quicker cooldown because all of the reflex procs are going to go to this A2. So I use him. He's my damage setup champion in Faction Wars. I also use him in my lower end Hydra team as a drop defense and weaken champion. He's also just good in dungeons. He's got some use cases in arena. I'm going to give Suzerain, he's got a drop speed on the A1, which also makes him really good for Hydra as well. That's another really good Hydra ability. I'm going to give Suzerain Catan a B-. I think he's really good. And that's going to do it for all of the Spirit Affinity champions that I've maxed out. Let's very quickly go over the two that I haven't, because I just pulled them recently. We've got Kira the Watcher, who's got a single target attack on the A1 with a 70% chance of placing drop attack. We've got an AoE, which has a 100% chance on a 3-turn cooldown of decreasing the duration of all enemy buffs by 1 turn, and then placing a decreased accuracy on all enemies for 2 turns. She's got an ally protect on all allies for 2 turns, and increased defense on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. And then she's got a passive here. Whenever an ally is attacked while under an ally protection, places a drop attack on the attacker for 1 turn. It's a bit of a redundancy with the A1 and the passive. The A3 is the best part of her kit. Ally Protect and Increased Defense is a great combination to keep your team alive, and it's on a short cooldown at 3 turns. However, the A2 I think is pretty weak. Decreased Accuracy isn't horrible, but it's not the best debuff. And then also having the decreased duration by 1 turn is pretty weak. It's been power crept quite hard by champions like Fabian, who has it for 3 turns, right? So I think buffing this up to 2 turns, maybe switching this to like a drop defense or maybe a decreased crit damage or a decreased crit rate would be better. It would synergize better with the passive, in my opinion. So Kira the Watcher, I'm going to give a D+ because I think that I think her kit, it's been power crept so much by other champions, but to be fair, I haven't tested her. So if I'm wrong, let me know. And then finally, we have Matab. This is the most recent legendary champion that I've pulled. He looks really cool. He's an HP-based champion out of the Barbarians faction. He has a single target attack that has a 50% chance of increasing the cooldown of target skills by 2 turns at random. And if they have 50% HP or less, it's a 100% chance instead. I actually think that's a solid A1. On the A2, we have a 100% chance of placing Provoke for 1 turn, and then places a block damage on this champion for 1 turn on a 3-turn cooldown. The block damage and Provoke, it's not a horrible combination. I don't think that's horrible. And then he's got increased resistance and reflect damage on all allies for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. That's a pretty bad ability, in my opinion. That's a pretty trash ability, in my opinion. And then this champion's resistance is increased by 50% when their active skills are not on cooldown. I don't think that's a very good passive as well, because you're probably going to go in PvE content, you're going to go first. So you're just losing that right off the bat. And in arena, I guess it's not horrible if you're building a resist team, but it's hard to build resist and accuracy for arena. So I don't like the way that sounds. It seems to me like it doesn't synergize very well, because you probably want more accuracy to place the provokes, right? And then he's got resist in all battles by 60. So you could use him as like a resist lead to resist debuffs. I don't know. I'm going to give Matab, I think I'm going to give him a D. I think it's fair. I think I'm gonna give him a D. So, all right, guys, that's gonna do it. Really long video, longer than any other video that I've done, even with all the edits I'm gonna make, cutting out those gaps. So let me know what you guys think. Obviously, tier lists are subjective. So if I overrated a champion, let me know why you think so. If I underrated a champion, let me know why you think. And I'd love to have conversations with you guys in the comments. I'd also love to see all of you guys having conversations with each other. I think that's really great. I'm going to go ahead and end it there. Thank you so much for dropping by the video. I appreciate all the support we've been getting over the past month or so. And take care, guys. And I'll just see you on the next one. Bye, guys.